across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. And there's a lot of general common sense going on. There's a lot of confusion as well. We will naturally be taking your calls and comments over that rather glorious win last night over Mexico. It was a stunner for all manner of reasons in a script you could never have written. Toby Gillis, who curiously is a Watford fan, yet still knows a bit about football, will join us a little later to have a chat about what happened and where we go next, of course. It's only the Norwegians. It's not like they've got some massive superstar Premier League striker knocking around on their side. Oh, yeah. Apart from that, it's a done deal. Also this afternoon, Nigel Farage is facing a parliamentary standards investigation after it emerged he failed to declare benefits provided by an ally once convicted of fraud in America, including security staff, social media support and use of a London property. Mr Farage is insisting he's done nothing wrong and is considering legal action. Will this change your vote, by the way? If you're a Reform supporter, does that story, in any shape or form, change the way you think about reform? I sense it doesn't, but just give me your thoughts on that. And a damning government-backed review into police leadership has found that officers must stop taking sides in culture wars and get back to catching criminals. This is Lord Blunkett, former Home Secretary, who co-chaired the report, joins us at 2 o'clock this afternoon. 0344 499 1000. So much to get through. So much to get through here, of course, including, well, I think it's only reasonable we start with this.
I can't be bought by anybody. No, not anyone. Not even Elon Musk. See what people in Clacton say? Good luck to you, mate.
Yeah?
They don't care. No one cares. They care if you're a crook.
Yeah.
Which I'm not and never have been.
There it is. So here we go again. Nigel Farage is back on the front pages. Fresh allegations about undeclared benefits, accommodation, security staff, and all the rest of it. An investigation may now look at whether everything that should have been declared actually was. Fine. Now, if that's the process, let it happen. But can we all acknowledge one rather inconvenient fact? Much of what is being discussed here happened before Nigel Farage was even elected as an MP. I don't think that's an irrelevant factor, and if there is something that's been missed on the paperwork, I hope they can put it right. So the question isn't simply, did he receive help, financially or otherwise? The question is, did he actually break any rules? Those are two very different things. Having wealthy friends isn't illegal. Accepting personal support before entering Parliament isn't automatically a parliamentary offence. If the rules have been breached, deal with it. If they haven't, then perhaps this is more about politics than principle. Let's have a listen to the finance spokesman for Reform UK, Robert Jenrick.
He's an old friend of Nigel's, and he's supported him in the past before Nigel was even a member of Parliament. He has no formal role within Reform whatsoever.
Is he paying for Mr Nigel Farage's security?
Well, I believe it says in the story that he isn't, but he supported Nigel before he became a member of Parliament. So there's nothing to see here.
Well, that's what he says. And here's the bigger political question. Do Reform voters actually care? They didn't flock to Nigel Farage because they believed he was a patron saint of expense forms. They backed him over immigration, the economy, and their frustration with the political establishment. I don't think that changes unless these allegations become something more serious, and there's no suggestion they will. I suspect many supporters will simply see this as another establishment attempt to wound the man they already believe threatens the groupthink, the status quo. Will some of those Reform voters be so peed off with this that they will revert back to the Conservatives? Well, maybe a few, but unless there's clear evidence of genuine wrongdoing, I doubt this changes many minds. Reform's challenge has always been political credibility. not whether Nigel Farage accepted some help from some mates before he even entered Parliament. So that's the broad brush of where we are. When Keir Starmer accepted a load of posh suits and he was dressed like the entire front window of every shop in Savile Row, wasn't he, for about a year? His glasses would have cost the average annual wage. I mean, he had all sorts of things going on with Lord Ali. What made that interesting was that Keir Starmer's thing before the election was, you know, the Conservatives do stuff like, we don't do stuff like, we don't even know millionaires. We don't know those people. We're just ordinary, humble, working-class folk, son of a toolmaker, all of that. We don't know folk who've got that much money. That's the others, that's the Tory lot. That's what made... He didn't do anything wrong either, OK? Mr Starmer had done nothing wrong and broken no rules. And with this, we will wait and see what happens, but... the fact that Nigel Farage knew a bloke that might have been a bit iffy in the States some years ago that works in cryptocurrency, former military man, bit of an aristocrat in his lineage, none of that surprises me. That, to me, is not like... I'm not going, oh, my goodness, Nigel Farage knows a bloke like that. No, that doesn't surprise me at all. Nigel Farage is about more than that. His whole thing is, look, let's get the job done. Yeah, I know a few rich people. Yeah, I do. They're not everybody's cup of tea. I get it. But have I broken any rules? He says no. Does it change if you're a Reform voter, a Nigel Farage supporter? Does this latest story change your vote? And are you going back to the Conservatives? 0344 499 1000. Let's get a word with a full-on Conservative. At least Oscar Reddrop used to be. I'm assuming you still are, Oscar, unless something's happened since that massive Mexico win.
Oh, I have to say, last night, if we can just very, very quickly...
We have to.
Puts a lot of politics into perspective in a way. I'm a huge football fan. You know, I was at the Iceland game in 2016 when we got knocked out in France. That last night was heroic. It was inspiring. The Lions went into that cauldron and survived and battled. And honestly, you know, we all have tricky periods of time in our lives, and you know, to see, there was something so inspiring about that, to see those players pretty much do everything but die for the England shirt was just, I can't put it into words, Ian. It was honestly incredible and so inspiring. And I'm very, 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 very proud of my country today.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel exactly that. And there's so many elements you can take from it. I mean, Bellingham scoring twice in 2 minutes. I mean, that was never, you know, if you said that to somebody before, what sort of odds would you have got for that at bookmakers beforehand? I mean, of course, we know he's a superstar player. He's top of his game. But even by his standards, that was extraordinary.
It was. And look, England are never going to be the most technical team. There are better technical players and teams than us at the World Cup. But I almost don't care at this point. What I saw last night, with everything stacked against us, the altitude, Mexico's biggest game in their history, the mythical Azteca Stadium, the heat, the South American referee, which I thought was a little bit questionable, all of that, and to see those English players just stand up and show that strength. It was a mentality game. It wasn't about the football. And I think that is so inspiring. And I think there's not always a lot to be pretty chipper about in this country at times. But my God, those lads, they did everything. It was everything for the shirt.
It was extraordinary. And I think, whilst we can celebrate some incredible goals, I think, firstly, you can see Tuchel and his team, their paw prints all over this, and the technical nature of how the team are being managed. What happened in the last 11 minutes in extra time, I thought was really telling in terms of the kind of team we've got today.
Yeah, and so huge calls that, and I was a big fan of Southgate. Southgate would not have made those calls. Taking Harry Kane off when we potentially could have extra time. Yeah. Going complete low block, 11 men behind the ball for over half an hour with 10 men. That felt very risky. Yeah. And he got every single big call spot on. and just watching them just batter back every Mexico cross, every attack, 11 minutes of added time. It was just, sport does have that ability to inspire. And, you know, if you are out there right now and your life feels a bit tricky or you're going through a tough time, and we all have our battles, I've definitely had mine, you know, that was just a really good symbol of just bite down on the gum shield, put one foot in front of the other, and you can get through this.
Our record, I mean, the issue was never Mexico, the team as such, was it? Our record against Mexico is pretty good, higher ranked and all the rest of it. It was, as you rightly say, it was much more than that. It was where it was at the sort of gladiatorial pit that was the stadium, the country, the heat, the altitude, the fans, I mean, everything. I mean, this was kind of sort of Game of Thronesy in terms of its hugeness and the sheer size of this. And when they interview any player that's been there, they say this is a stadium that will eat you as you kick. It's just every ball is another nail in your coffin as far as the away supporters are. It's brutal and it's visceral and you feel it. And our guys just went out there and said, sod this, we're going to get on with it and we're going to play some tasty football. And boy, they did. Very briefly, if you could, Oscar, Saturday, of course, we play an outfit called Norway. Wasn't even aware they had a national team until a couple of hours ago. Apparently there's a fella called Haaland or something that knocks around there from time to time. We know he's a little bit tasty when he's in possession of a football. But, again, track record says, you know, this is not a team that has spooked us habitually over the years.
No. It'll be a very different game. It will be a bit of a chess match. It will probably be won in moments. And I think the mentality, when you come through a game like that, I honestly can't see anything stopping England now.
If they can keep that going.
Because we all know in life, like when you come through adversity and you come through something where all the odds are against you, everything is stacked against you, the weather, everything, and they're a good team, Mexico. Everything after that, I feel, will feel relatively easy. So keep Haaland in the pocket. And I honestly think, you know, France are obviously the best team at this tournament, but we showed a mental toughness that I've not seen another country show so far.
Yeah. We just want to see a Norwegian and a Frenchman jump over an advertising board between now and then. And maybe that'll just work in our favour a little bit. Let's come back, Oscar, to some politics of the day. There's always a scandal. There's always an allegation of a scandal. And we live in a world where we pick up on a lot of stuff these days. Keir Starmer's been through it. The Tories certainly went through it. Boris's wallpaper, goodness knows what. This is the latest. It's right that we question politicians, particularly from the party that's penciled in, according to the polls, to form the next government. But what are we making of this? The Reform's central allegation is that this is fairly cooked up, well-trodden, retrodden stuff and means nothing at all, and Mr Farage has done nothing wrong.
Well, that's what the process is for, and the process will, we will see whether that is correct. In the interim, however, I think it's been handled badly. First of all, I agree that if you are going to vote Reform at the next election, and you love Reform and you love Farage, this whole situation doesn't change anything for you whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, I would say it kind of, you batten the hatches down a bit, actually, and you probably feel a bigger sense of loyalty. However, the wider problem is that Farage needs more than just his Reform supporters to win a general election. And there'll be a lot of undecideds that, kind of flirting with the idea of Reform, really unimpressed by everyone else and kind of thinking, oh, could I, would I, who won't like the smell of all this. And it hasn't been handled well. And it hasn't been handled well because Farage has tried, and Reform have tried a couple of tacks. They've tried distancing themselves from it, kind of going a bit underground.
Yeah.
That didn't work. He then tried, and Reform have tried, being pretty front foot on it. No one cares. It's a load of rubbish. You know, no one cares. It's my money, you know, blah, 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 blah. You know, people just say, good luck, teammate. That hasn't quite worked. That hasn't hit the right note, I think, for a lot of people. The best thing that Reform should and could, and, maybe it's a little bit too late now, but should have done, was just do what they've been doing, which is constant press conferences, policy, big events, all that eye-catching stuff, dominating the news agenda on their terms, on their work, on their policy, on their momentum. And they haven't been doing that recently. That's really tailed off. And so
it was almost a weekly event, wasn't it, at one point?
Yeah. And that would have been the way to handle this. Yeah, you'll get questions about it, but look, we're having a huge press conference. We've got so-and-so ex-people here, big glitzy announcements, really cracking on.
Yeah.
They haven't done that. And that's why people are left thinking, what's going on? Is this actually more than it seems? Are they more worried about this than they're letting on? Is there problems behind the scenes?
Is it danger? Do you detect then that, Nigel? I mean, there is a sense that whilst Reform is still riding high, Oscar, they do need to maybe regroup after a little bit of a bruising in a couple of by-elections, which, OK, they've still done incredibly well for a party that didn't exist half an hour ago. I mean, this is still impressive stuff. We wouldn't ordinarily judge that as some kind of failure. But there was the 5 million thing and now this thing. There is a sense that they need, I wouldn't say, relaunch, but a rethink on something.
Agreed. The momentum has stalled, and I think that was happening anyway, despite this latest inverted commas scandal. But the two of them have come together and really set them into reverse a little bit, and that's really difficult, right? Like, to use a footballing analogy, it's all brilliant when you're winning 3-0 every single week, but when all of a sudden you're 2-0 down away from home at half time, that really shows what you're made of. And I think that's the mentality that Reform need now to have. They say, like, right, the chips are down. We have been facing a few adversities. Momentum has been lost. Andy Burnham is going to be a very difficult and different challenge for us, potentially. We need to, take inspiration from the England lads. We need to hanker down and we need to show what we are made of now. This is an hour of need for us in the party in relative terms. And we need to really turn this around. And I don't want to overcook it. I don't want to, overplay it. There's a long way to the next election. But it feels like, I'm not saying it's the case, and Reform voters and people at Reform will say, Oscar, you're talking absolute rubbish. But it feels like they're not far away from kind of the brink a bit in terms of winning a general election. I do, it doesn't make me happy saying this as a Conservative, but I think if he gets through this process and it does turn out to be a nothing to see here, guys, I think that should put rocket boosters under him. It should actually, that Teflon thing. Sure. And I want to see then from Farage, I want to see, right, we're back and we mean business.
Stay with us, Oscar. More stories still to come from Oscar Redrop, former Number 10 advisor. On the Nigel Farage story, will this change your vote if you're a Reform UK supporter, a Nigel Farage supporter? Does this do you sense this is sort of the media playing mischief, just digging up stuff for the sake of digging up stuff? Does it substantially alter the way you feel about Reform? And if you were a Tory, as many Reform voters are, they used to be Conservatives, has any of this made you say, I'm going back to the Tories now, tried Reform, don't like it? I'm sensing none of that is true from most Reform supporters. 0344 499 1000.
The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This from Nick in London, who says, "Hi, young Ian. I'm liking Nick already." Says, "My memory suggests that while he was an MP and leader of the opposition, Starmer was receiving all kinds of everything from Lord Alley, and others apparently didn't declare anything until after he became Prime Minister." I can't remember the chronology. You're absolutely right, Nick. He was late in declaring. I honestly can't remember whether it was before or after, but almost irrelevant. The fact is he was late. And that would be the allegation thrown at Nigel Farage. Old politics seems to be muckraking simply to shut up Farage and reform, says Nick. Although I mean, there is a feel of that. There is a sense, and I can understand that argument. But Starmer did get hauled over the coals over his suits and his glasses and his Taylor Swift gigs, as did Boris Johnson with his wallpaper and all the rest of it. So how was Starmer punished, says Nick? Farage's alleged benefactor may have been convicted outside of our jurisdiction some time ago, but with Louise Hay, MP, was convicted here for fraud. Why is she still an MP? Well, I'm going to cut her a little bit of slack. Was the allegation directly fraud? I mean, I think she was about 16 when she claimed on she claimed, didn't she claim a phone had been nicked and it hadn't been nicked, or something of that nature? And then she found it or something like that. Yeah, it wasn't a good look, that's for sure. And Louise Hay, of course, as Nick, I think, is alluding to, is sort of Team Andy Burnham, front and centre. We'll watch with interest. Oscar Redrop is with us. We're looking at the big stories of the day, including this one. And, of course, it's no surprise that this story pops up. Always a good one to look at. This is the police who must stop engaging in woke culture wars, says a major report. Lord Blunkett, former Home Secretary, is going to join us later on the programme. Behind this report, the police leaders are accused of preferencing certain groups, and it calls for an ethical reset to refocus entirely on catching criminals. It's bizarre that we even have to say that out loud, Oscar, but that appears to be what Lord Blunkett and his team have come up with here.
Well, absolutely credit to Lord Blunkett, and, you know, putting party allegiances aside, this is a very, very serious, experienced man and gets things right 9 times out of 10. So I think the fact he's coming out now is going to be hugely beneficial to the cause. And what is the cause? The cause, in my mind, is that policing in many ways should be viewed as almost like being a doctor or, like, you know, a high-stakes medical practitioner. There should be no politics involved in it whatsoever. It is the enforcement of the law, and that should be completely blind to all things politics. And very much, I was going to say wrongly or rightly, but very much wrongly, there is a sense, and I have sympathy for officers because it's something bigger than them as individuals. They may even not know they're doing it, but the environment that is sit underneath them, that they sit underneath, has become politicised far too often and far too much. And I think police officers are often terrified in really difficult circumstances to do their job. And we have seen some really horrible, emotive recent incidents of exactly that. And I think it is a key pillar for this nation, is that we have strong enforcement of the law and everyone underneath it is equal. And that hasn't felt the case.
There's been a couple of high-profile cases. Of course, there was the Henry Novak murder and what happened there. That's still being investigated. Police officers, I think, suspended or certainly from frontline duties while that's happening. There was a clip recently that we saw of we can't talk too much about it because there are charges around it, but certainly the guy who looked as if he'd been hit by someone, possibly a black guy, he was attacked and then the police handcuffed him rather than the guy that did the attack. So there's all of this stuff. Because I'm a reasonably intelligent bloke, Oscar, I have to advance.
Steady on it.
I know.
Late night last night.
I'm overstating a lot of things here. And I've said this before. I reckon if you're a black guy living in North London or South London and somebody talks about two-tier policing and white guys getting discriminatory treatment, after you've pulled yourself up off the ground from nearly dying of laughter, you're probably thinking to yourself, what the hell? Seriously? I've spent a lifetime watching white blokes drive their car around doing all manner of things. I simply open my Cortina door and bang, someone's nicked me. Happens all the time, wherever I go. So it's kind of interesting that it's become a white experience. I don't know what the data would say on this, but there's certainly no doubt we have some obvious and demonstrable cases that look as if the police have gone, yep, we did do that. We were pulling over too many black guys and cuffing too many black guys. So what we're going to do now, we're going to cuff too many white guys to make up for it.
Yeah, it's almost like a pendulum reaction, and both are wrong, right? I think it's absolutely right. I think black people in this country for many years were absolutely wrongly treated, I think, by the police. And there have been very high-profile cases of this. And we are now seeing the same for white people in this country. So this is the whole point, right? This isn't about one versus the other. This is equality under the rule of law that is enforced in an entirely blind, objective, distanced way. And I think that's what Lord Blunkett, in his time as Home Secretary, and I think, so it's brilliant you have him on the show. If you challenged him on that, I don't think it's about redressing any balance and, oh, we've gone too far this way, so we must go back to this. I think it's like, we just need that equality, because without that, I mean, I really, alongside things like freedom of speech, and, you know, I really worry for this country, because if you can't trust the police and you can't trust that the rule of law will be policed fairly, then you don't have a lot left as a country, to be really frank about it. And so when you see these cases of if white people in this country feel like, and white police, crucially, are worried about the perception of being racist, so they enforce the law in a different way, wow, Ian, you can't overstate how damaging that is for this country.
It's interesting that this one does sort of come and go, and I guess social media, in many respects, Oscar, doesn't do any aspect of life many favours. If somebody wants to create
it's had a huge impact.
It has because you can very easily post stuff, and it's very powerful and it gets very wide attention.
And absolutely, and I think police officers would say it's completely changed the nature of policing now, because everyone has a phone, everything is documented. And what does that do if you're a police officer? It makes you think twice. It makes you think 3 times. It makes you think about perception, and that ultimately can freeze you from enforcing the law as you see it. Because you're worried about these wider things in context.
Indeed. Oscar, on that point, we have to stop. Great to have you on, as ever. Lovely to see you in jubilant, patriotic mood as well after that stonking result in Mexico yesterday. Thank you to him. Oscar Redrup, former number 10 advisor. Over to you on any of those stories, the woke police stuff. Lord Blunkett, David Blunkett, joins us a little later in around about half an hour's time. Looking forward to that. And your thoughts on the Nigel Farage story. I mean, you know, we have, I wouldn't even call it scandal, we have accusations of donors, political donors, who they are, where they come from. Does it make any difference? Is this any different to the questions on Boris Johnson or Keir Starmer's suits, etc.? Some would say it's bigger, some would say it makes no odds. If you're a Reform voter, does it change anything for you? 0344 499 1000. Dan Hodges has been writing a lot on this, joins us next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
With all of these stories, whether we are talking about Keir Starmer's suits or Boris Johnson's wallpaper or Nigel Farage's friends with deep pockets, the question, I suppose, to many comes down to, does it matter? Does it matter? Let's speak with Dan Hodges, commentator, Mail on Sunday, and, of course, joins us from time to time here on the show as well. Good to see you, Dan. I mean, you've talked about these kind of stories over many years in different forms. I know you're majoring slightly on this one as well at the moment. Does it matter? Is there a case to answer?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, you put your finger on it. I mean, obviously it mattered in the case of Boris Johnson. The various scandals around him ultimately sort of became lumped together and ultimately ended in his departure. I think, again, with Keir Starmer, obviously his premiership was almost derailed from the beginning by the scandal in relation to Lord Ali, his access, his donations, because obviously Keir Starmer had just been elected on a mandate of "I'm going to be different." And I think this is why this is becoming such a serious problem for Nigel Farage, is that Nigel Farage's mandate, if you like, was to be the agent of change. He's the guy who was supposed to be different. He was supposed to take on the establishment, sweep away, drain the swamp, etc., etc. And now we're just getting these constant drip, drip, drip. I mean, it's no longer just a drip. It's becoming a flood of stories about his, dodgy money, dodgy contacts, failure to declare donations, failure to declare loans, etc. And that's why he's again in this, caught up in. I mean, I would call it a scandal. This ongoing scandal about Posh George.
It's kind of interesting because I'm slightly conflicted on this. I mean, I'd like to see no politicians having any of these kind of questions to have to answer. It's a shame. It's sad for politics, etc. Wouldn't it be nice if it was all a little more sugar coated, perhaps, for my delicate palate at least, Dan? But I from time to time these stories come along. And if we go back over 20, 30 years, we will find lots of them. Bernie Ecclestone and tobacco back in the Blair years. I mean, slightly different point, but it was still under that category of, who donates the money. With Starmer, when the Lord Ali, I mean, I don't know how many suits he bought him or how many £5,000 worth of glasses he bought him, or who paid for all those times that the cabinet went to see Taylor Swift. I don't know how many times somebody can go and see Taylor Swift, but they seem to have a PhD in it for about 2 months. With that, my problem with that is that Starmer had told us, we don't know people like this. We're the working party. We're like you. We don't know millionaires. We don't know people who can do us favours like this. That's the Tories. They know all that lot, not us lot. It was that, and that's what stuck for me. I mean, it turns out Starmer didn't break any rules, as far as I think he was a little late in declaring some stuff, but he didn't break any rules. With Farage, the fact that Farage might know a bloke that's a cryptocurrency dealer who got into a bit of trouble in America for some moody goings on in a transaction of some sort, that doesn't surprise me. Nigel Farage comes from that sort of trading background, bit market tradery. I'm not saying that's okay, but it's not a surprise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but it does. I mean, I'll be honest, it does surprise me. I mean, and by the way, this isn't hindsight, particularly in relation to George Cottrell. I mean, I wrote a piece back in February. George Cottrell's a guy who was a convicted fraudster and did time in the United States for I think they call it wireless fraud. In February, right in the middle of the Gorton and Denton by-election, which was a crucial by-election, Nigel Farage took his time out to go to a book launch at a really posh hotel in central London, in which George Cottrell was launching his new book, How to Be a Money Launderer. Yes. Right? Now you don't need to be a political genius or great political expert to understand that if you're running on a platform of being the tribune of ordinary working class people in Britain, hanging around, bowling up to champagne receptions for book launches like that is just daft. And I said at the time, this should be the opportunity now. We could see at the time, Starmer imploding, the Tories and Kemi Badenoch at the time were absolutely absolutely nowhere. And I said at the time, look, this should be Nigel Farage's opportunity. And frankly, he's blown it because he's hanging around with guys like this. And that's exactly what's happening. And the problem is, Nigel Farage just refuses to come clean on this stuff. I mean, the point is, this has come immediately after, obviously, the Harborne thing, the £5 million. I mean, £5 million, one of the biggest personal donations in British political history, which Nigel Farage failed to declare. Initially said it was for security. Then he was on TV last week having an absolute car crash saying, well, maybe it was for security, maybe it wasn't. Maybe I could spend it on Ferraris if I want. And the point is, as I've said, the fundamental problem for Nigel Farage is his force field has been turned off. For years, allegations of this sort, he could just casually dismiss it with a bit of a joke or just brush it aside. But now this stuff is starting to stick, and rightly so, because Nigel Farage is no longer just the cheapy chappy who's the disruptor of British politics. He's a guy who certainly for a period was being talked about very seriously as a future prime minister, and his party reform as a future party government. So the terms of scrutiny have changed now. And the reality is, as we're seeing, Nigel Farage and reform can't cope with it. We're not getting any proper responses to any of the legitimate questions that have been asked, just a succession of people roaming around going, oh, it's a witch hunt, it's a witch hunt, why are they being nasty at Nigel? And obviously that's not how it works if you aspire to the top job in the land.
One of their central allegations seems to be, Dan, that this is not a new story. And I think the Sunday Times team that put this together refute that and say, actually, there were some new elements to this story. But Jenrick and others are saying this is just regurgitated hash, I think, from a left-wing newspaper, as I think they called it.
But that's it. I mean, you've put your finger on it. I mean, this is the problem. One hand, we were, there were reports this morning, the classic thing. Nigel Farage is considering suing over these reports. But then the other line is, well, yeah, the reports are true, but they're old. Then the other report is, yes, these are all reports being got up by his hard left political opponents in the Sunday Times. I mean, I've seen his allies roaming around social media today. I mean, some of them are attacking me, some of them are attacking journalists from the Times, some of them are now attacking journalists from the Telegraph. All of us who are supposed to be part of this, this hard left cabal writing in papers like the Mail and the Times and the Telegraph, and it's obviously nonsense. The reality is, I've been on your show several times. I was I was critical going way back about, Boris Johnson and some of the scandals surrounding him. I was very critical about all the scandals surrounding Keir Starmer. Obviously, the suit, also more recently, the Mandelson stuff. And this is just the same sort of accountability. And Nigel and his supporters, they can moan about it, but they're just going to have to suck it up because this is not going to go away.
Just a final point then, Dan. Confirmation bias is an interesting thing. Reform voters, I'm hearing it already from many getting in touch, will not see any of this. They will say, actually, yeah, I mean, that's what happened. It affects my vote in no shape or form. I will still vote reform. Do you sense that that's likely to mostly be the case, or will reform supporters start legging it for the hills? Some even maybe going back to the Conservatives.
You've got to distinguish between reform supporters and reform voters. Obviously, hardcore reform supporters will be with Nigel Farage come what may. I mean, there's a slightly cultish element around what we're seeing now. But it will start to attract. It will start to disaffect voters, and we're already starting to see that. Reform last October were 31% in the polls. Now they're down to 25%. And I think, as I said, I do now see similarities between this and the Mandelson scandal for Starmer, in the sense there are just too many strands to this story. That every day now we're getting another dodgy guy, another foreign guy, more big money, another failure to declare it alongside the parliamentary rules. And frankly, in the same way that, as I said, it turned out to be true, I couldn't see a way of Keir Starmer putting a lid on the Mandelson scandal when it sort of really took off. I can't actually see a way of Nigel Farage putting a lid on this now. I think this is just going to dog him and run and run and run. And this narrative about where's he getting the money from, why is he getting the money from, who is this guy? I think that is going to be there to stay for Nigel Farage, and I think Nigel Farage and reform are going to have a very, very important decision to make sometime in the next few months.
Dan, great stuff. Thank you. Good to see you again. Dan Hodges, commentator with the Mail on Sunday, really helps us out here on Talk with stories such as this. Dan's, in fairness, quite consistent. Went absolutely, I mean, goodness me, we spoke to him over the Mandelson period and what that meant for Starmer in terms of a lack of judgment. He has been consistent. This merry-go-round that politicians find themselves on is asked to stop every now and again when the media and others go, I think we'd like a word with you. This happens to be Nigel Farage's time for the merry-go-round to stop. Not a pleasant experience, I would imagine, if you're the person that's the focus of this. But does it change your view or your vote? Fergus is down in London. What have you got, Fergus? Good afternoon.
Well, I'm just loving it. I've been watching this show for hours. It's so good, all of it. But the thing is, what they're doing to Nigel is what they did to Trump. It's the same story. And it's funny, all this so-called right-wing press, a left-wing press, if you like, they can't bear that the independent bloke, if you like, Nigel, is going to do well. So what can we throw at him? And the things about, it's so similar. It's amazing what they did to Trump about the January 5th.
But they would... I mean, that would suggest that a group of journalists have got around a table, Fergus, and gone, how do we stop this Farage character? Or they've been given information about somebody who's been a significant donor or somebody with a certain background and happen to think that's in the public interest.
Do you remember the old expression, dog bites man, not news. Man bites dog, news.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing, I think. It's all the lefties and, the left-wing press are trying to do something.
Would you call the Times and the Telegraph and the Mail left-wing press?
I'm amazed. I'm really amazed because they never were. And the Telegraph...
But have they not just found a story that they think is genuinely of interest in the political sphere right now?
Yeah, well, if you remember, you will remember, I know you will, there was the man who ran a company that was giving out sausage rolls or something to members of their people who came to their gym, and they found out that they were actually getting them free of charge, and they were charging people for them. And the press loved it. It was the Daily Mirror went for it because he didn't say, oh, sorry, and Nigel could just say, oh, sorry, and that's all he's got to do. Oh, sorry, yes, I understand. That's it. That's all he needs to do.
Well, his point on the first problem, or the first story, is the 5 million quid one, which now sort of gets kind of new legs, as it were, because of this one, so people start revisiting the old one. His point was, yeah, a bloke I know gave me 5 million quid. So what? Nothing to do with you. I can buy a TV, go on holiday, a Ferrari, anything you like. So sod off. Now, that could literally be true. I mean, it may well be that you've got somebody who's really, really rich who just said, I want to give you £5 million. But it wouldn't be unreasonable for an investigative journalist or a political journalist to follow that up, right?
Yeah, I agree, totally. Just like they did with Starmer, with his glasses and his suits.
Yeah.
And staying at Lord Ali's house with his son for the O-levels or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it was right for them to examine it. And it all got dropped. Or also Miss Ginger, sorry, forgot her name briefly.
Angela Rayner.
40,000, yes, sir. Her £40,000 tax bill. Oh, sorry, I missed it. Oh, OK.
Well, it turns out she didn't do anything wrong.
No, of course she didn't. No, she just forgot to declare it. And so she's now totally innocent, and she calls everyone else scum. Scum.
Tory scum, usually.
Tory scum.
Remember that?
Tory
scum. Go on, Ange, give it to him, love. That was the horrendous clip that showed the worst of left-wing thinking and the absolute worst of Angela Rayner. Listen, I hear you, Fergus. Thank you, mate, for that. 0344 499 1000. The one thing it isn't is, you know, the only interest I can declare in this is I literally work in the same building where the people that wrote the Sunday Times story happen to work as well. What definitely did not happen is that somebody said, right, boys, girls, we've got to stop this Farage guy. Let's cook up some story. Let's rework an old story. Let's throw in some hyperbole and make some mischief. That did not happen, right? That did not happen. what would have happened is that a journalist has gone, look, we've got a few new elements to this, stuff we didn't really know, and we think it is in the public interest to show it. And particularly on the back of somebody who's already in denial about a £5 million donation. If it turns out there's a trend to this, and there are other things, then why would you not be thoroughly examining the man who is penciled in to be the next Prime Minister? Now, when you put it like that, as I've just rather brilliantly put it, frankly, you go, yeah, that's fair, that's fair. That's what the Sunday Times would have thought. My point is, do you care? Do you give a hoot about this if you're a Reform supporter? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer, talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions, to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Bill says it will make no difference, just make Farage stronger, says Dan is very wrong on this. Amongst your own supporters, it will. Absolutely. If you're not a Reform supporter, it will make you stronger in the belief that this is a man you could never, ever vote for. It's tricky. I think it is tricky, and I think it's tricky for Reform to outline perhaps more. And there was a whole series of interviews that Mr Farage gave last week, including to this station. A specific, I think it was it Julia, I think he spoke to on that occasion. And for some people, it wasn't the best defence, and Farage is usually very good at this kind of stuff. But his defence is really simple. Yes, I know a very rich man. He gave me some money, said, you know, well, use it on security if you want, but use it on anything else, frankly. It's got nothing to do with you. Now, put like that, that's a perfectly reasonable position. It might be unconventional for somebody to give you £5 million. I get it. But if you're a supporter of somebody and a backer of somebody and you want that person to do well, then similarly, with Lord Ali, the same thing happened there. Lord Ali thought, right, I want Keir Starmer to be the Prime Minister, so I'm going to buy him 25 grand's worth of suit. In fact, I'll buy 10 of them, so he looks really good. I'm going to replace those old Specsavers numbers with a really nice pair of absolute stylish designer gear, so that his eyes look as if they were painted by Da Vinci. And every time he looks around at you, this beautiful set of tortoiseshell framed specs stares back at you and smacks style. If a mate wants to do that for a mate, then that's kind of fine. It's all about declaring it. It's all about declaring it. And of course, once a declaration has been made, you've got to judge for yourself as a voter as to whether you think that substantially changes the fabric of the person or the party they represent. And when Boris Johnson couldn't fully answer the question about who paid to have his flat decorated, I need to know if my Prime Minister is in the pocket of someone. I need to know why that person would have said, here's £100,000 so you can buy some nice furniture and wallpaper for your Downing Street flat. Yes, that is in the public interest. But does it change anything for you? Matthew is in Warrington on this very point. Matthew, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hey, mate. Great to speak to you again.
You too.
Reform.
Yeah.
So I know they've been a bit quiet on the media front. They have been on social media a bit. I was watching them today going on about women's rights now on Instagram. But what you got to remember is in the last couple of months, they've had local elections. They've had 2 by-elections. So everyone's gone a bit quiet on the media side of things. You know, if you're Nigel Farage, he's been in politics, 20, 30 years now. He knows the ins and outs. They've been scraping muck about him. They've scraped more muck out of him than they have on the Bridgewater Canal. And they've still not got anything. And he knows the game. He knows if someone's going to drop you £5 million, he knows at some point someone's going to dig that up and try and make something of it. So they're not stupid.
It's a hard one to defend, isn't it? When a millionaire gives a politician who might be the next Prime Minister £5 million. But that's not in itself illegal to do that. It's as long as you've declared and gone through all the correct sort of avenues, and one would assume you've got to pay tax on that as well. So once you've done all of that, then does it matter to you? Do you need to know that, Matthew?
Not really. No.
So if somebody gave Keir Starmer £10 million, do you think that's of relevance to the public?
No. If it's from the Communist Party, or the problem you've got with the Labour Party, they get paid from the unions. So their strings are pulled by the unions. I think what scares the 2 main parties is that the reform. They're trying to rewrite politics from top to bottom. They're going to change everything. They want to look at every little thing, and they're a bit thin on the ground. So it's hard. They need money. They started off with nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing, and they're the biggest party in the UK membership-wise. You know, he's going on TV. There's only 5, 6 MPs, and they're all trying to get on telly. They're on your show every day. They're on GB News. You know, they go on. Zair Yousaf. He's constantly on the telly.
Sure.
So I like Zair. He's really, really come to light to me. I think he's such a sharp politician. Well, he's not. I know he's not an MP yet, but he's so sharp. And it's hard for them. So every little thing they're going to do, they can't get them on policy because they've not changed the policy. They're not suddenly turned around and said, well, you know, we're going to suddenly change the pound to crypto because he's got £5 million for crypto money. They've not said that.
But does it bother you? But Matthew, does it bother you that reform are meant to be? This is the kind of party of the ordinary man, right? We don't do all the guff and nonsense associated with the other parties. We're straight talkers, we're transparent, we're like the man in the pub. But nobody meets a man in the pub that suddenly trousered £5 million from a benefactor. So does it tarnish that bit of their image at all?
No, because I look at the bigger picture. I would have rather him say, when he said the £5 million, he said, well, it's within security because I don't get security. I think it was great. And then he said, well, it's no one's business and I'm going to buy a Ferrari. Doesn't paint himself in glory, does he, by saying that? He should have just said, well, look, I've got security, I get death threats, I'm up and down, and I've got donors, people who are supporting me. People, you know, at the end of the day, career politicians is proven over the last 15 years don't work for our country. We need business people. We need people who know what goes on in the boardroom. We need people who know what goes on in the military. We need people who knows what goes on within the electricity and gas board and the public sector. We have been failed by our politicians for far too long, and I think me as a normal working class guy, and I voted Tory and Labour. I voted for Blair when he came in because I wanted a change, and that went wrong. But fundamentally, as an ex-military man, I've always voted. I've been a Tory voter. The Tories failed us. They went in with the Lib Dems, and then we had the COVID, and I thought Boris was going to save us, and he didn't. And it's got far, far too wrong. And now Labour got in, and it's the same Labour from the 70s who couldn't. It was dictated. There were strikes. There was pay rises. And nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. And now the normal working class people, middle class and working class, are looking at it and going, hang on a minute, we're all getting battered in. The only people who are benefiting from it is a public sector work. If you work on the trains or you're a bus driver, you're going to get a good pay rise. If you're an immigrant, you're going to get everything on a plate for you. But if you go out and work 8-9 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, you pay your taxes, you have a pension fund, the Labour government are going for everything. They're now going to go for your houses and the money you've got in your houses. And people have had enough. And you know what? So what? Farage might have took 5 million. There might be a few dodgy goes on. We've got to do something to change it because we've had enough. We're sick and tired of this same BS, mate.
That is, you're spot on with that, Matthew. And the question is, are reform the antidote to the way the kind of country has been run and the sort of duality between both parties, how nothing really seems to change? And if he's trousered 5 million quid along the way because somebody wanted to help him out in a personal capacity, does that bother you as long as the job he sets out to do gets done? Thank you to Matthew in Warrington, 0344 499 1000. Loads of great comments on the way. I'll come to some more messages in a second as well. You can message us on 87222. Right now the time is 2 o'clock. Let's get the latest news headlines.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is the Afternoon Empire. Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome, home of Common Sense. We are, of course, looking back at that rather magnificent football result last night, in case you didn't notice. England beat Mexico 3-2. Takes them into the quarter-finals, playing Norway this coming Saturday. Where were you? How did you watch it? How did you deal with it? What's your day gone like? Did you go to work? Did you take the kids off school? Thoughts on all of that, and we'll take your messages too on 87222. Also, this afternoon, Nigel Farage is facing parliamentary standards investigation after it emerged he failed to declare benefits provided by an ally once convicted of fraud in the United States, including security staff, social media support and the use of a London property. Mr Farage insists he's done nothing wrong and is considering legal action. And a damning government-backed review into police leadership has found that officers must stop taking sides in culture wars and get back to catching criminals. Lord Blunkett, who co-chaired the report, joins us in just a couple of moments' time. You can get in touch, 0344 499 1000. So this was one of the most thorough examinations of policing ever undertaken. It's delivered a damning verdict this morning. Police leaders have been accused of preferencing certain groups, engaging in culture wars and losing sight of their core purpose. Let's speak with Lord David Blunkett, Labour peer, former Labour Home Secretary, who co-chaired this report. David, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Do you know, I've just discovered, you know when people say, you know, you're getting old when? And I was, not that I don't and haven't followed your amazing political career for many years, but I couldn't quite believe, I had to look twice when I realised it was 25 years ago that you were Home Secretary in this country.
It surprises me as well, but I'm still keeping going.
You never stop, and you were a very effective Home Secretary. And the reason I start with that question, other than the fact that it's rather interesting to think it was a quarter of a century ago, these kind of subjects and comments that we hear about, sort of this so-called woke policing and two-tier policing and disproportionality with arrests, a focus on certain subjects, was any of that across your desk when you were Home Secretary?
I'd inherited the Macpherson report that was commissioned by my predecessor, Jack Straw, and that Macpherson report was about the murder of Stephen Lawrence and unquestionable racism within the police that led to the perpetrators going free. And there was a media campaign that eventually got some of them into court. Now we've got the opposite accusation. We've got people saying, oh, well, the police are woke and, you know, they took the knee over Black Lives Matters. And actually, I'd written about that 6 years ago. Said, I don't think people would expect the police to take the knee, not because they might not be deeply empathetic, but because that's not the job. Their job is to be absolutely scrupulously independent, whether it's of waving flags or whether it's taking the knee or whatever else it might be, wearing badges. That's not the job. The job is to prevent crime, to protect people and to prosecute where necessary.
Whenever we talk about these issues, like so many strange quirks of, I suppose, life in general, you wonder where the first seed was sown and where something happened. At what point did something take a turn in this direction and where did it come from? Is there anything, I mean, from your report on this, where do you ascertain, David, that sort of where it began and why?
Well, I think racism or woke, the two ends of the spectrum where the pendulum swings, is bad leadership. Good leadership is to be able to incorporate an inclusion and diversity without going over the top. It's about good practice. And good practice means that if you're good at the job, you get promoted. If you're not, you don't, whether you're male, female, whatever your orientation, whatever your colour or ethnicity. You know, that's good leadership. And to do that, you need transparency. And we're recommending very clearly that the whole recruitment, training, development, promotion, monitoring and appraisal needs root and branch change from bottom to top. And that includes promotion because we've discovered, sadly, that there's nepotism, which in normal language means blue-eyed behaviour. If your face fits or you're a mate, you're more likely to get promoted. Well, that's completely and utterly unacceptable. So a new process of monitoring and evaluating and then registering what you've done in terms of being a really competent copper, and the development programs you've taken and the reviews of your work, all of that will be registered, and that will come to bear when you go for a promotion, and we'll have independent assessors with the promotion so that this isn't any longer whether your face fits.
I'm always intrigued when stories seem to go backwards, where our kind of evolution sort of goes into reverse gear. When you look at, I mean, you mentioned Macpherson at the beginning. We're all painfully aware of how that came around and the implications and what the directives therefore after were. And yet here we are, and prior to that, of course, you know, everything from the Sweeney on the TV, Life on Mars, you know, Your Nicked Son, you know, the racism, violence, whatever.
I remember Dixon of Dock Green. That's how old I am.
That's aged you again, David. I mean, we're going back even more decades. But look, I mean, on this point, what I find quite sad, really, is that in this report, not a single police force was rated outstanding. And I would have thought, here we are in 2026, that we should be able to say, God, do you remember when no police force was outstanding? Now they're all outstanding, or they're at least in the ballpark.
Yeah, well, and a third require improvement for leadership, and that's what we're getting at. We spent 9 months. Nick Herbert was the former Conservative police minister, now chair of the College of Policing. He said, would I do this? I said, I'll do it jointly with you. 9 months ago, it's been a hell of a task. More in the last 9 months about the police than I did in the near 4 years I was Home Secretary, partly because things are hidden from you, partly I think things have actually seriously got worse. So we've got a task, and it's a task that benefits the police and all those serving in it, because they want good leaders, they want honest, decent promotion prospects, they want to be treated well, and the public want exactly the same. So there's no divide here between what's good for the public, us, and what's good for the policing service. These things go together.
When you say things are hidden from you as Home Secretary, are you talking about civil servants and say, well, let's not bother the Home Secretary with that, or is it more substantial than that?
It's even as basic as when you go into a police station, and I went into a lot. You might sit with people in the canteen, but they think, God, this is the Home Secretary, and there's somebody hovering behind us, and is this going to be detrimental? That's the kind of feeling and reaction we've got to root out.
Yeah.
So I want future Home Secretaries to be able to go in and people to tell them the truth and not find that afterwards they're done over on the back of it.
And just finally, I mean, much of this, of course, is very relevant because of the Henry Novak murder. Now, of course, there's still a lot of ongoing investigation on this, but there was, you know, there's been everything we have experienced and seen and read about on this story looks like a very clear-cut example of what you're talking about. We don't know yet whether that will be the case, but it's that kind of thing that very, very much disturbs people.
What my immediate reaction was, who trained this guy?
Yeah.
You know, that was my reaction. Did you learn the training? You see, 63% of the recruits last year were from a new program that was introduced a year or two ago. And there's no accreditation and development program once they've gone through the initial induction. And we've got to stop that. Almost a third of the force have been in there for less than 5 years, a lot of them on this PCE program. And I'll just leave you with this thought. The Hampshire Police recruited only on this program. None of the other avenues for getting people into the police service, only this route last year.
Which is why, again, very final point, David, your report talks about a sort of Sandhurst-style academy.
It does indeed, and we had Nick Cowley, the head of Sandhurst, on our commission. I went down there and took a look. He's radically reformed and modernised leadership within the armed forces down there, and we've learned a lot from him. We don't want a military academy. We need a damn good police academy that has all kinds of beneficial inputs and great outcomes where people can be really proud to have gone through that and come through with flying colours.
David, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that. Lord David Blunkett, Labour peer, former Labour Home Secretary under Tony Blair, of course, who co-chaired this report. Let's get a more of a policing voice on this. Chris Phillips, former Detective Chief Inspector in the Met, ex-head of National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Chris, I know there's always a mixed or an interesting relationship between cops and politicians, and I'm sure it doesn't change when it's ex-cops and ex-politicians, but David Blunkett did make some really good points there. A lot of it felt fairly unarguable. What do you make of this report?
Yeah, the report's very good, and I don't disagree with it. What I'd say, though, the thing that's missing here is after the Lawrence... I've got 7 points I'd like to make.
Yeah, go for it.
After the Lawrence inquiry happened, the Macpherson report, the police have been basically called institutionally racist for 20 odd years. To understand the impact that has on police forces, you have to see to believe it. Officers were tarred with a brush that they were all racist, and you can imagine the impact that would have. I would also say that in the last 15, 20 years, that the police have been completely asset stripped. We've moved away from communities where police officers used to work and mingle. We've now turned into a fire brigade policing, and a fire brigade policing which actually has seen police officers leaving at a rate of knots because they don't believe they're being supported. And the pay and conditions of policing has meant that people just don't stay in the job. So what we have doing this fire brigade policing is kids in uniform. And I say that with the utmost respect for people that go and do this. Most of the police officers you'll have any contact with have less than 5 years service. This is just incredible to lose that amount of experience in such a short time. We've also got a situation where the country's changed dramatically. The makeup of the country in the last 15 years has completely altered, and police now are having to police areas that they don't really understand. And they certainly, it's whole communities which have been turned from one thing into another, and they're struggling with that. And I would just make the point that Mr. Blunkett, Lord Blunkett, said about having this Sandhurst. We had exactly that. We had Brams Hill. Brams Hill was the equivalent of Sandhurst. It was within 5 miles of Sandhurst, and it had exactly the same thing. It had senior officers going down and receiving senior leadership training. That was all got rid of by the Conservative government. And these things have all come together we now have a situation where policing just don't do the job anymore, don't do it properly, and we're seeing the results.
Is it possible? I mean, look, we await the fuller report on the Henry Novak story. I've always had a kind of just trying to imagine what that police officer was thinking, because, of course, when we watch the footage, it is horrendous. He's not bullying Mr. Novak. He's not even being unpleasant to him in conversational sense. He's sort of dealing with him as if he's talking to a drunk guy.
Which is what he thought he was.
Which is what he thought he was. I mean, it's entirely because obviously lots of people are saying, right, his unconscious bias kicked in. How he was trained was turn up at a scene, there's a brown guy, there's a white guy. It's the brown guy's the victim, the white guy's the perpetrator. I mean, it's entirely possible, of course, that particular cop might go, no, I got it wrong, but I turned up believing that's what had happened. I didn't think it was because he was brown and he was white. I genuinely thought that's the information I had, so I acted on it. Now, that's not a great defence, but it's different to the issue that he was somehow trained to operate like this.
I think, Ian, you make a really good point, and very few commentators are willing to make this at the moment. Listen, the police officers were responding to a racist assault on a Sikh guy. The Sikh guy had his hat off. The witnesses that were there when the police officer turned up confirmed the story of the supposed victim, and the police officers were firm with someone who, they obviously didn't realise immediately had been stabbed. And in when you turn up in a dark environment, there's very little light, you don't know what's going on. Everyone that I've ever dealt with in that situation has told me fibs or told me lies. And the fact is that it took them 4 minutes to work out that he was actually the victim and had been stabbed. I have a lot of sympathy for those officers. They didn't deal with it as they would have liked to, but they were being fed false information, and it's such a difficult job in the middle of the night dealing with what you think is a drunken fight.
So what needs to be dealt with? And I mean, bearing in mind this report does say there is a problem. It talked about...
Oh, there is a problem.
It talked about Macpherson and the problem there, which many people, certainly from the black community, would say is still very much... Don't talk to us about two-tier policing. We've got a flipping degree in being two-tier police. That would be the argument in certain... Whether you're in Brixton, whether you're in Tottenham, those kind of areas where there have previously been flare-ups and issues. And, of course, on the other side of this... the average person would say, well, yeah, I see it happen. This is meant to have been a response to that, but both things are going on. I mean, what is the reality here as we sit here today?
It's a real difficult one to deal with, because you've got to keep officers in place for a start. You've got to have people that train these officers that and the circumstances that they're policing in, that they would want to stay for 15 to 20 years, not 3 years and then leave, and then another new person comes in with no experience. The police have been really awful. Some of the senior leadership has been dreadful, and I say that with a heavy heart, really, because we get the policing that we deserve, and society is deserving what it gets at the moment, because we've treated the police badly. The police, we've got less police officers per person than any other country in Europe. We are so underfunding our police service. Likewise, we were asking them to deal with all these mental health issues. They were tied up dealing with that. They'd have the whole team actually dealing with mental health issues on a night duty. Yeah. Quite incredible, not allowing them to do the job that we pay them for.
So, briefly, if we can, Chris, what is the if you like, number one on the to-do list for the police going forward? If you were standing there at, a federation conference or any other kind of senior cop, what would you be saying out loud is the first way out of this, what appears to be politely a bit of a fog, and impolitely a whole bloody mess?
Well, let's start with reinvesting into policing, understanding actually the criminal justice system as well, the prison service, etc. Reinvest into the policing, bring people in as much as you can and increase their training. Return actually to the good work that we used to have when we were one of the top. We were looked upon as being the top police forces in the world, and get back to that level of training and that level of experience that we've got a chance. And incidentally, returning back to community policing would do a great deal.
On that point, Chris, thank you. Nice to have you on with us as always. Chris Phillips, he's a former Detective Chief Inspector with the Met Police, also head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Thank you to him. Over to you on that one, 0344 499 1000. Back to our subject we began with as well, because we'll take calls and comments on all of this. Nothing is kind of off limits. The Nigel Farage story. The Sunday Times, had a revelation this weekend, but there have been others previously. Does any of this make a difference, by the way? If you're a Reform UK supporter, do you really go, well, I was a Reform UK supporter, then I read the Sunday Times story and I'm not any longer? I don't imagine that's going to be the case. How many people actually care? Do you see this as best tittle-tattle and at worst some concocted, politically motivated campaign against the man who polls say will be the next Prime Minister? 0344 499 1000.
Conflict breaks out anywhere in the world, it has consequences here at home. Talk War is your definitive national security briefing. From the conflict in Ukraine to the tensions in Gaza and the latest escalation with Iran, this is where you'll find comprehensive comment and expert analysis with multiple updates throughout the day. The Talk War podcast from Talk, available on the Talk app or wherever you get your podcasts. across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Lady Lou says apparently Nigel is not a man of the people because he went to Cottrell's book launch with champagne during the Denton by-election. So says Labour-lovey shill Dan Hodges. I think you would be struggling. I mean, this gives you an idea of how little some people know about politics and journalism. Because the idea that Dan Hodges is anything but viscerally hated by the Labour Party. Ian Collins agrees with Dan that the Times haven't got together and done a, I think it's meant to say hit job rather than hot job. Well, it's not that I agree with him, it's just that I happen to know for a fact they haven't, because I literally work in the same building and know how a story is put together and what would or wouldn't get through the editorial, which is just a bloody nonsense. And it's rather bizarre that somebody would tell me what's going on in my own workplace. But could be wrong, of course. Could be a bigger conspiracy, Lady Lou, that I wasn't told about, and something bizarre is going on. It tends not to work like that. And this is just a story where a man who is likely to be our next Prime Minister clearly has some questions to answer. He feels he's answered them. And a journalist would naturally raise those questions. I mean, what part of somebody being given £5 million would the media not question? I mean, seriously. And it's fine, but I haven't got a problem with it. I'm not questioning the authenticity of it. And I thought what Mr Farage said in his response was fine. And that is, yeah, it's my money. I do with it what I like, mate. Security, Ferrari, I can do with it what I like. Private bloke gave a private citizen some money. Not me as an MP, none of that. Cool. But I think journalists in that sphere are absolutely, we should be really worried when they stop investigating stuff like that. Richard is down in London. Richard, what have you got for us? Hi.
Well, Ian, I mean, in a way, we talked about this a little bit last week, and I think the sort of general point one of the points I tried to make last week on talkTV was that I actually think we now have a situation where Labour have got they've got their act together. They've got their first media savvy leader for about 20 years. He's a good communicator, and the right has got. I mean, I think at best, I think we've got two unelectable leaders with Farage and Lowe, and we've got a leader in Kemi who I think can take the Tories.
Why would you say Farage is unelectable, given that all the polls suggest that he's going to win?
Well, I mean, I'm coming to that because he's been going down they've been going down in the polls for a few months, and the problem here is that these questions aren't going to go away, and they feed into something I think which is much bigger, which is that reform have kind of arisen out of what I call a politics of hysteria, and strangely enough, I actually think Dan Hodges is actually one of the journalists possible, because responsible in a way, because if you look at the way we got rid of the Tories, we got rid of the Tories saying, oh, anybody but the Tories, and clearly we ended up with something much worse. But the problem is, I mean, Ian, there's a whole load of problems. We've got rid of at least 3 leaders for not being able to basically tell the truth or to get the story straight. Certainly Boris, certainly Starmer over Mandelson, and Farage doesn't seem to realise that if he who lives by the sword will die by.
Yeah, and also the further you get on or move on in the game, the more scrutiny naturally you come under, because as it becomes possible that you would either win a general election or at the very least be pivotal in the outcome of that election, you know, even if you came second, you could severely dent the numbers of others and that sort of thing, then naturally people are going to start questioning you. And if a businessman gives you a shed load of money, then it's literally the job of a political journalist, an investigative journalist, to follow that up. And usually the answer will be, we couldn't find anything like criminal, and it might just be a bad look for some people, and to others they'll see nothing wrong with it at all, Richard.
Well, but the point is, if you go by the rules, he hasn't. I mean, it's fairly clear, as Dan was saying. This is one of the biggest political donations in history, and it would have been easier for him to have declared it. And even 5 weeks ago, people like Julia were saying, look, all he's got to do is say, look, I screwed up here. I'm very sorry about it. But you all realise I need 5 million because I'm probably the most hated. I need 5 million because I'm probably the most hated politician in Britain, as well as being the most loved. So I need the security.
I mean, there was
the trouble is, this story keeps changing, and it feeds into this idea that Simply Reform have never actually got their act together. And if I come back to my point, they're becoming unelectable because, as Kemi Badenoch has realised, there is a much stronger anti-reform vote across the country than there is anti-conservative, and that's partly why Kemi's.
But are they? I mean, those
that won't do a deal.
Every time we see the polling, I mean, the polling might have reduced a bit. I mean, it couldn't have been any higher. I mean, it was off the scale for a party that was relatively new. And still, if you polled today, they would come out as the party likely to get the biggest majority in a general election. So it is still rather attractive to wide groups of people. Richard, thank you very much indeed for that. I don't know, if I was advising Nigel Farage on his kind of media appearance on that last week when he kind of did the BBC and some of the commercials and he appeared with us. I mean, as I've read it, the 5 million thing, Nigel was going to leg it from politics. Remember, he was like, oh, no, I'm not going. There was this couple of weeks when Richard Tice was the leader and Richard had to go out and do all of the interviews, which he did brilliantly. But, of course, Nigel Farage was so associated with the brand, there was a sense that, this was going to be devastating, possibly not terminal, but a real devastating moment for reform. And there was talk of him, I'm not going to stand as an MP. This was after Rishi Sunak had called a general election, right? I'm going to go and work for Donald Trump in America in some capacity. Now, if you're a private donor that feels, and you're worth a squillion quid, and you think, actually, I still believe Nigel Farage is the man to change things in the country. If you hate Nigel Farage, that will sound like an odd sentence, but if you're not, that will sound perfectly reasonable. And so I'm going to give the guy 5 million quid, and maybe he can change his mind. Maybe he'll stick around. Maybe it'll be enough money to keep him comfortable in whatever form, security or otherwise. Maybe that should have been the greater line, because that's how I see this donation happening. That's the first one. The Cotterell one, I mean, people can make up their own minds as to whether that breaches something, and it's under investigation parliamentary terms, so we will see. No one's going to jail for this. It's not a sense of, oh, look, somebody is, he paid for some social media staff for me. It's not in that category. But it is all about transparency. What will come of it, we will see. Does it make any difference to you as a reform voter? More comment on the way, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Leave it to Daddy. 25 to 3 on Talk. Lots to get through. Loads of questions as well. This This one from Chris, who says, it's really clear there is a concerted effort to discredit Farage, and those involved probably think that voters will return to Labour and the Conservatives like good little voter sheep. That won't happen. If they remove Farage, they'll drive all those voters to Rupert Lowe. Which would they prefer, I wonder? Don't want to scupper anyone's individual opinions on things. But, of course, these are the same journalists that would have written and did write about Starmer and Mandelson and didn't let it go. They're the people that wrote about Boris Johnson, Partygate, Wallpaper, and didn't let it go. This is what political journalists and political investigative journalists do. The likely source of something like this is that somebody close to reform, in some shape or form, usually formally of reform, has sat down in a bar with a journalist and gone, look, do you know about this? Did you realise that this was the amount of money that was given to Nigel Farage by a convicted fraud? Did you know that it paid for... That's how those stories come around. The idea that a journalist goes into work at the Times or the Guardian, wherever, and goes, yeah, right, we've got a problem on our hands. We've got to change this. I mean, I work in the same building for the same company for pretty much the same management tier, and then obviously it shoots off into different tangents, whether it's TV, radio, TalkSport, HarperCollins, whatever. But broadly speaking, I think we might have become slightly aware of this sort of effort where somebody had said, come up with everything to get rid of him, to stop him. We've got to stop the man. This ain't going to stop Nigel Farage, and no journalist thinks it is. But the idea that you would be in possession of a fact like that, somebody rings you up, OK, your first day as a political journalist, and said, oh, you heard what's happened to Mickey Smithers, the MP for Upper Dicker. But you know what's happened to him? Yeah, somebody gave him 10 million quid. What are you going to do with that information? Wow, I'm going to write about that for every day for the next 10 weeks. You'd just go there, wouldn't you? This one comes in from John. The attempt to character assassinate Nigel Farage is so predictable. Reform are doing well. It was always going to happen. But I think you could also say, if you're Nigel Farage, it was always going to happen. Nigel Farage is an outgoing character. He's got a bit of the, that Boris thing that people sort of fell for, but he's got a charisma about him. He's got a real charisma about him. He can speak without a script. He's seductive and mesmeric when he gives a speech. He's a great debater. He can hold his own. He's got desires and plans to reform the way we do business. So, I mean, yes, that's always going to... You open yourself up to that. And, of course, in the current epoch, 21st century, 2026, social media Britain, the desire for journalists, and this is where journalism might have a case to answer, the desire to get it out there quickly and do something different and get the attention is greater than ever. Let's go to Mary, who's over there in lovely Cyprus. What's it, about 40 degrees over there, Mary? What's going on? Good afternoon to you.
Yes, it is about 40.
Wow.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm as good as gold at this end. What's going on? What are you thinking?
Well, what I'm thinking, I feel very sorry for Nigel Farage, I'm afraid, because as I understand it, now I might be wrong, but as I understand it, this 5 million that everybody's talking about, I gather, was given to him when he wasn't in politics.
I think to say he wasn't in politics stretches it a little bit, but he wasn't an MP.
So he wasn't an MP. So for that reason, he would not have had any excuse to declare it.
He did make that point. I mean, that comes down, doesn't it, to which is kind of the question we're asking. Does it matter if, it's a lot of money, it's unconventional, it certainly doesn't happen every day, and it won't happen to anyone any of us ever get to meet in our lives, but it's well, apart from Nigel Farage, it's happened. It's fair that we ask the question or talk about it, but it doesn't make it illegal because or even immoral, because it's a lot of money and something that doesn't happen often.
Well, no, but really, the poor man should be concentrating, I believe, on the good work he's doing politically to try and make sure that he can at least try and get in to be a prime minister to get Britain sorted out again.
Do you know what? If I had £1 billion stuffed in a bank account and a politician came along who I thought could tangibly change the terms and conditions of business of this country, the to-do list, the priorities, I would absolutely send them £5 million if I thought it would help. 100% I would.
Well, if I was able to do it, I would as well. But unfortunately, I'm not able to.
Well, you know, you're an expat, Mary. I mean, you might have a few quid squirreled away. It could make a difference.
But I think that, if I may say so, that there's too much time being taken up about this rather than getting down to what the basics are that are required for Britain to get it back on its feet properly. Not worrying, but because the poor man's been given. I mean, I think probably a lot of it is jealousy. But all the things. I mean, Starmer had all those suits and glasses and goodness knows what cabinet were dressed.
Yeah.
By Alibaba or whatever his name is, and didn't Starmer also use his flat, and his son used his flat?
Yeah, I think. Well, I don't think it was just.
Starmer's £30,000 shower that he's put in Downing Street.
Yeah, I don't know whether that's his shower, but because he's not going to be in it for very long, or it's become a shower of something, hasn't it, over there? Mary, thank you very much indeed for that, Mary in Cyprus. But of course, the point is, we did question Keir Starmer. In fact, it was almost before he got out the traps as Prime Minister. I mean, every single day we majored on Keir Starmer's suits, what his wife was wearing, how many, was it football matches they'd gone to? Was it Taylor Swift seemed to be the gig of the day? They all seem to be, what's her name, Boomerang Rach, the Chancellor of the Exchequer. They seem to love a bit of Taylor Swift. They were there, you know, some of them went about 3 times. I mean, that's a lot to digest. She can knock out a playlist, I'm telling you. You say, I haven't seen Taylor Swift live, but I've seen, you need to book in for a good few hours on that one. You're in for the long haul. So to see that 3 times as a grown man, a bit weird, isn't it? I don't know if Starmer himself went to Taylor Swift, by the way. Let's talk about the nanny state here. This is always interesting. You know, the usual drill: no cigarettes, sugar taxes, alcohol pricing, junk food bans. Well, there is a question. Is the nanny state sanitising Britain to death? That's the headline of a great piece written by the journalist and novelist James Dixon. Joins us now. Afternoon to you, James.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good as gold at this end. Great to have you on. I mean, just tell me, what's the motivation behind... I mean, look, the nanny state is forever with us, and there are some politicians who... in fact, I almost respect the politicians that say, yeah, I think the state should do more. I think we should ban stuff. I think the collective in government does... I get that a bit more. Like Corbyn, Jeremy Corbyn made sense to me because I understood it. Yeah. This lot, I don't know where the hell they're coming from, what they stand for, where they want to go, but they do like banning stuff. We know that much.
Well, it's kind of classic Starmer, isn't it? No real ideology, but a lot of tinkering at the edges.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a bad piece of legislation, I don't think.
This is the Tobacco and Vapes Act, right?
Yeah, so it's the tobacco and vape ban. For anyone listening, it's basically anyone born after 2009 will not be able to buy cigarettes or tobacco or vapes or anything. Which, I mean, it's a well thought out piece of legislation. It doesn't discriminate anyone currently smoking and should stop people smoking in the long run. And we've seen we've got a long history of public interventions like it really leading to some good health outcomes. This one was a line in the sand for me. It was a step too far. The idea of someone never being able to have a cigarette. We live in a country where no one can afford to go out for a pint. Yeah. Loads of people can't afford to go out for a coffee. All these just simple pleasures are being denied the younger generations, myself included, to go as far as to say you will never be allowed to smoke seemed ludicrous to me. We have, at the moment, we've always had the age of legal consent being 18. 18-year-olds can consent to buying tobacco, knowing the risks, and it's impossible not to know the risks. It's all over the packaging. It's everywhere to be seen. No one can afford it because it's 20 quid for a packet. But if you can afford it and you're of age, you consent to it. And to withdraw the idea of the age of consent from anyone born after 2009 seems so deeply patronizing to me and so just soulless and awful.
I completely agree. They, of course, would say, James, well, hang on a second, this stuff like blows your lungs up, gives you cancer, your breath stinks, you die of heart disease if you don't die of the big C. Who wants that malarkey on the shop shelves any longer? So we'll phase it out nicely. Who gives a toss what James Dixon and Ian Collins think?
I mean, fair enough. I say it as an occasional cigar smoker. I think the mental health benefits I get from having a quiet cigar at the end of a long day far outweigh any of that. I'd say that, I mean, I say in the piece that we seem to be in an age where optimization is everything. We're being told we need to be living longer, being fitter. Fair enough. I mean, I'm an ex-personal trainer myself. I applaud anyone wanting to get fit and healthy. But what are we living for? If every joy in life is denied us, and not that smoking is sort of the meaning of life or anything, but it's one of those small pleasures that means a lot to a lot of people, gets us through often a quite miserable day, and just should be there if needed. And yeah, to take it away, it's soulless. It's why I focused so much on the idea of sanitization.
Indeed, and
it's not a bad idea. Objectively, it's a good idea, but it's so sanitizing.
But we should
horrendous.
also be. I mean, I don't even think North Korea have banned smoking, but I mean, we could argue there's maybe other reasons for that.
Yeah, we'll be an outlier.
And that's the kind of we should always be suspicious when the government make big decisions like this, and even if we. There are things fundamentally we might agree with, because it's quite hard to sell the opposite to this, isn't it? If someone says we're going to ban smoking, most people go, well, that's a cracking idea, but actually that's not really the point, is it? The point is about the overreach of government.
Well, do you know, I was speaking to my dad the other day, and my family are all sort of progressive, big statist. They're all on board with that. I mentioned it to my dad. I mentioned I'm writing this article, and he said, yeah, but it's a great idea. No one should smoke. It's really bad for you. And so we got into a bit of an argument, and I saw him a few days later, and he said, I've been thinking about it. And he said, the idea that someone won't be able to have a cigar on their stag do, or on their wedding night, or on the day they've wet the baby's head when they've become a parent. It's just horrendous. And that's the thing. It's not just people smoking like chimneys that we're trying to stop. Fair enough. It's those little moments of joy that life should be replete with and is increasingly not, because of forces beyond our control.
I wonder, I'm just sort of trying to, slightly satirise it a bit here, but because it does lend itself to that, as to whether there will be an arm of the police, the kind of fag patrol that go out there. I don't know, with a big net or a massive ashtray they just hit you with, or some other way of deciding that you've broken tobacco laws in years to come.
We're not going to
jumping out of bushes in
for 5 hours
gardens.
if you've been broken into, but we'll take that cigarette away from a 16-year-old.
Exactly. Put the cigarettes down, please. You can almost you can hear it being said. Listen, it's massive food for thought, this. James, thank you very much indeed. James Dixon, freelance journalist and novelist. Check out the piece he's written for Spiked Online. The nanny state is sanitising Britain to death. And I thought the way he just phrased it at the very end there, that you would get to, I don't know, what was the date that you can't buy it? January 1st, 2000. So if you were born on or after 2009. So Finn, our producer, who's 14 currently, would sit in... no, he's 24. So he's missed it. And my kids have not missed it. So my son, if he gets, you know, to that stage where he wants to celebrate, I don't know, so say he's 30 and him and his partner have a baby and he goes out for a drink and his mates say, let's have a cigar. And he's in the pub garden having a cigar and along comes PC whatever from the local police station, from the fag patrol, and says, excuse me, you've got some ID on you. And he produces the ID, and the copper says, we're not allowed to smoke. He says, yeah, but I'm celebrating the birth of my, you know, or the news that I'm about to become a father. You can't smoke, you're under arrest. What, for lighting a cigar? Yeah, because you were born before January the 1st, 2009. Keir Starmer told you, years ago now. That, when you put it like that, sits very uncomfortably. 0344 499 1000. By the way, we've got a brand new Voice of Doom on its way. It's a little peach, we think. It's coming next, right here on Talk.
Get to the calls now, and Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Hey. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to
disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I know we're talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people.
Yeah, more people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Caroline says, all this chat about Nigel Farage, when did the British taxpayer give their consent to send millions to overseas country? Where is the consent for politicians to abuse our taxes by paying for legal aid costs for migrants entering by boats? Did you consent to your taxes being used for these matters, says Caroline. Thank you for that. This one as well from Lynn. In Devon, you're allowing people to talk about this 5 million as a political donation. Please, can you correct this? As it wasn't a political donation at all. Nigel has dedicated a large chunk of his life to what he believes in, and due to this, his life has been threatened. He deserves all the help he can get for this alone. As an MP, he cannot take money without declaring it, and he hasn't done this as far as I'm aware. In fairness, Lynn, that's Nigel Farage's line that Lynn is kind of repeating. I was at pains to point out that it was that Nigel had said on a number of occasions that it was a personal gift. This new revelation, if it's new, some say it isn't, over the weekend, is, I understand, slightly different. Before we talk to Bob in Ludlow, Voice of Doom, OK? It's day one of a brand new voice. The last one lasted 1 day. The previous one lasted about 11 or 12 days. So this is a brand new Voice of Doom. Remember, it's a mystery voice, but it's political. You have to do is identify who you think it is. Male, female, young, old, dead or alive, left wing or right wing. Very simple question. Who is this?
What we want to do.
OK, let's hear that again.
What we want to do.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stinker already, that one, isn't it? And here it is again.
What we want to do.
Is there a tinge of Welsh in that boy? I don't know. Just sort of slightly picking that. I might be wrong. I'm not meant to say anything like that. No clues or anything. Could be wrong. If you think you know, 87222, 87222. Here it is again.
What we want to do.
There it is. If somebody gets it correct, we'll reveal all after the news. 87222. If not, it rolls over to tomorrow. One more time.
What we want to do.
Also, later in the show, I'll be letting you know how you could win a massive 26,000 quid tax-free. Oh, yes, all thanks to Talk's World Cup celebrations, which just got given booster rockets over the last 12 hours. If you can't wait and want the details right now, head over to talksportwin.com. That's talksportwin.com to find out everything you need to know. Let's go to Bob in Ludlow. Back to Nigel Farage. Bob, what are you thinking on this? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon, mate. How are you today?
Good as gold at this end. What's going on?
Yeah, I was watching this, you talking to that Oscar guy earlier.
Yeah.
And, for one thing, I have to wonder, he's a self-confessed Tory, why you have these ex-spads on that basically ruin the country one way and another.
Well, I mean, it depends how much responsibility you attach to the SPADs. Special advisors are usually pretty good, like politicians themselves. They're so much better when they're not in the job anymore. Because they tend to know, they know how it works. They've seen behind the scenes. They've watched it up close and personal. And, of course, as Charlie Rowley, former Tory advisor, often says, he can't ever recall advising anyone on anything. So you kind of wonder how important those roles are sometimes.
But they took the taxpayers' money for doing it anyway.
Well, it depends on who it is. I mean, I think he's jesting on doing nothing, but you can be paid by a party, you can be paid by, from the public purse.
Yeah, I mean, with regard to the Farage situation, I'm not a Farage supporter, I'm not a Reform supporter, I'm not a Labour, Conservative, Green, 50 other different varieties or whatever. At the end of the day, the guy I was hoping was going to be the next Prime Minister is no longer standing, unfortunately. But that aside...
Who's that?
Ben Habib.
Oh, I see.
But basically, that aside, I believe it's the Tories that kicked this off with Farage, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you go back to 2010, the Prime Minister of the day, the Tory Prime Minister, David Cameron, fiddled his expenses to the tune of some £10,000. Now, he didn't go to prison, which...
I'm not sure he fiddled his expenses, did he? I think he was. I think he was. Well, I only say that because if he fiddled them, he would have been guilty of a criminal offence, and he wasn't.
Yeah, but we all know how this system works with these people.
Yeah.
I'm an ex-copper, I'm an ex-soldier, and at the end of the day, these people never do wind up in prison. I mean, you just got to look at Blair for that. And
True, but I think the expense thing was a very specific area, wasn't it? Where you were allowed to claim for a toaster and a flipping, a plate rack and a dog.
At the end of the day, he had to repay £10,000. Now, if it had been some poor guy on the street that had done the same with the benefit system, that guy would have got 5 years. Automatically.
No, that's true. But I think I'm not defending David Cameron, by the way. I just think the system was so screwed in the way that it allowed MPs to put a claim in. And it was only later when people said, well, hang on, was that strictly a claim? And, well, yeah, he would argue it is, but the system said it no longer is, so you've got to pay it back, which would be seen as slightly different to if you decided not to pay your income tax, for example.
Yeah, I mean, you could put it that way, but the system is still screwed.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Listen, Bob, I hear you. I've got to run because the news is just about to come on. Thank you for that, Bob. Tim in Suffolk says the smoking ban, digital ID required. Yeah, it is really that. Because it'd be very simple. You just walk, as soon as you walked into the shop, you'd be photographed, bang, it comes up on the till. Nope, this person was born before that. We've got the ID. You don't even need to supply it. We can see it with our own eyes. Sinister times ahead. We've got a new voice of doom. Have a listen.
What we want to do.
If you think you know who that is, 87222. Right now, 3 o'clock, let's get the latest news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back. It is the home of common sense. 3 minutes after 3 o'clock. We will have a little focus in this section, why would we not, on that fantastic win for England last night over Mexico. It was an absolute stunner of a result, of course. The country went mad. Did you go to work? Did you skive off work? Did your kids not go to school? Did you do the bit of sleeping beforehand, waking up, going back to sleep, or did you not sleep in any shape or form? Were you in a pub, half cut by 5 this morning? Thoughts on all of that? And, of course, we face Norway this weekend. Also this afternoon, Nigel Farage facing a parliamentary standards investigation after it emerged that he'd failed to declare benefits provided by an ally once convicted of fraud in the United States, including for security staff, social media support and the use of a London property. Farage is insisting he's done absolutely nothing wrong and he's considering legal action. We'll watch this space. And that damning government-backed review into police leadership has found that officers must stop taking sides in culture wars and get back to catching criminals. Lord Blunkett joined us a little earlier, former Labour Home Secretary. He co-chaired that report, revealing stuff and always interesting to talk to him. A man who was, you know, a Labour Home Secretary, but some would say was slightly more right-wing than anything that's ever followed. Lots to get through, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000. And what about this? Guido Fawkes. We often reference Guido Fawkes. Many of the guys that work for Guido often come on the programme. Exclusively revealed that Andy Burnham is minded to revive Keir Starmer's £47 billion Chagos deal, heavily influenced by National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell. Doing so would risk enraging Donald Trump, who previously humiliated Starmer, of course, over the plans to hand over the islands to Mauritius. It's always struck me as it's just weird, right? I know that sounds like a very... I mean, if you put that in a dissertation, you'd be kicked out of university. It's a bit weird, but it is weird. It's bonkers. Let's speak to Lord Ross Kempsell, joins us, Conservative peer and publisher of Guido Fawkes, of course. Good afternoon. Good to see you, Ross.
Great to see you again, Ian.
We haven't seen you for a few years.
I know. Right. Formerly of this parish.
Formerly of this parish, political editor of this parish. We did shows together. We sat there doing an all-nighter for, I think, the Tory leadership contest between... was it Jeremy Hunt and Boris?
I think it was, yeah. And then imagine your career goes down the pan and you end up in the House of Lords for having started at Talk.
That's right, yeah. But do you like the House of Lords?
Yeah, of course.
I always think that I said it to you during the break, that when I was in the press gallery, I would nip over to the House of Lords. Well, it's only over there, obviously, from where you're standing. I would nip in because I think if you are politically minded and want to see some really good debate, it doesn't always get the headlines, but you do see it in the House of Lords.
Yeah, that's right. But I'm also a fan of the House of Commons, and I think the great thing about the House of Commons is it's 100% elected, which you can't say for the House of Lords.
True.
But they're supposed to work together in tandem in our system, and people have all kinds of views about it being good, bad, or indifferent.
You can be obviously, you could still stand to be an MP, couldn't you, as a Lord?
Not while you're a Lord, but in theory you could change your plans, but...
Yeah, how does that work? Because that seems like a curtailing of one's, life possibilities.
There are a couple of hereditary peers, I think, who...
Still hanging on in there.
...rejected their hereditary peerage back in the early 20th century or to go into the House of Commons, including some former Prime Ministers. But other than that, generally, you stay in the House of Lords. But obviously, it's a great privilege to be there, and you do the best that you can. And actually, recently, the House of Lords has been really important under Labour, in my view, because there have been a couple of crazy pieces of legislation, not least the one we're talking about this afternoon on Chagos, but also on workers' rights, assisted suicide, all kinds of things. And they've been slowed down by peers in the House of Lords, and otherwise they would have probably come into law.
I'm always mindful of, when somebody criticises a judge and they say, look, he's asleep, this old duffer, and the judge is rarely asleep, if ever. Usually they're just listening because they're very clever and they're good at taking it. There are some obvious exceptions to that, and we've seen some really batty court case sentences and the like. And the House of Lords, when I remember... You probably found this the first time you went to Parliament. You're mooching around and you see people, you go, oh, my God, it's such and such. And there's these people that, literally, that were in Thatcher's cabinet or something. And then when you look at the House of Lords, once in a while, some of them are like 590 years old, but still quite sharp characters. Good political thinkers.
They are. I think I bring down the average age by, 1,000%.
I think you have, yes.
So, anyway, it's a little bit like being in the talkTV office. You just bump into all of these legends, from time to time.
It's very odd, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. But, a lot of people consider it a very treasured part of our constitution, so...
Yeah, I think so too. Let's look at this story, then. The Chagos thing, this really is filed under the sort of category of stuff that doesn't make sense. We can't work it out. If you could work something out but disagree with it, I'm fine with that. This I just can't work out. I can't work out why the sort of Herbers of this world, and certainly the Starmers, are absolutely hell-bent on flogging this place to Mauritius, which, of course, has all manner of kind of knock-on effects. With other places that we should be worried about. The only thing, the nearest I've ever got to this, is that the likes of Starmer and those around him are supremely bothered by the idea that an island on the other side of the world flies a British flag, and I think that keeps them awake at night.
Yeah, well, in fact, one of Keir Starmer's best friends, the lawyer Philippe Sands, landed on the Chagos Islands and raised the flag of Mauritius there. So
you made it sound like Darwin then.
I think that probably speaks to your point. I mean, the reason we're talking about it today is because we thought it was all over with Andy Burnham and that this deal was not going to come back. I was part of a very big parliamentary campaign, I'm pleased to say, against giving away the Chagos Islands territory from the UK and giving it to Mauritius, although giving it at a cost, in fact. The cost is going to be £47 billion, which is going to be paid by British taxpayers for territory that the UK already governs. So we thought we'd slowed that one down, and the government hadn't brought back this bill, the Diego Garcia bill, to give away the territory in this session. But now it emerges, as we reported on Guido this morning, that Andy Burnham is minded to continue with the deal. Now, I don't know about you, but Andy Burnham, when I think of him, I think of Manchester, of course. I think of a football fan, somebody who's keen to be taken as a popular guy, somebody who's keen to reinvent Labour. What on earth has giving away British sovereign territory in the Indian Ocean got to do with any of that? It's more reminiscent of Mauritiusism than Manchesterism. And I think Andy Burnham is in danger of straying way too far from his principles, notwithstanding the fact that he's committed himself to £250 billion of unfunded spending commitments. And if you add another 47 to that, he's going to completely blow the Treasury budget. So it's not deliverable for him.
And also, I mean, Burnham has kind of acknowledged that, you know, if he comes into number 10, which he will, that there's not loads of money swirling around. So at what point, when somebody says to you in a meeting, there ain't loads of money, do you make a conscious decision to spend £47 billion of taxpayers' money for something you don't have to do?
Yeah, and to give you some context, money flies out of the government the whole time, and it's not the government's money. There's no such thing. It's taxpayers' money paid by hard-working taxpayers like you and me. And £47 billion is a lot. That's a very significant budget for the government. To take that money and appropriate it, essentially, from British taxpayers and to give it straight to Mauritius for the right to lease back territory, the sovereign base on Diego Garcia, which we already govern, is criminal, in my view. And, you know, the UK cannot afford that. The net effect of it, basically, actually, is to completely reverse Mauritius's sovereign debt position. So by doing this, the UK is just gratis giving Mauritius a massive upgrade in its economic standing for no reason other than to take back the base that it already owns. And, you know, in addition to that, this amount of funding will allow the government of Mauritius to take the vast majority of its citizens out of income tax altogether. Wouldn't it be great to take the vast majority of citizens out of income tax altogether here in the UK, or to spend that money, as Andy Burnham has said, on all the kind of important things that I think he's, to be fair to him, he's right about, that need to happen in the UK and that he wants to focus on. You know, he was giving a speech the other day and he said he wanted to be a Prime Minister who would focus on the UK's domestic priorities. That's exactly what we need after Keir Starmer, who spent the vast majority of his time gallivanting around the world to pointless conferences, achieving nothing.
Well, just on that point of Starmer, because I noticed he's been talking about how everything, all the big things he did in the last 2 years, you know, worked really well, and the country is in a better place than it was in. And I thought the only person that could ever say that would be Keir Starmer, because I don't really know. I think even those that might have voted for him probably wouldn't go that far. But he's saying that, you know, we didn't give his plan enough time. Essentially, there was this secret Starmerism, this philosophical template that existed. We just didn't give the poor fella enough time to implement it.
Yeah, but what did he actually do in office? He did very little of any meaning whatsoever. I mean, he came in elected on really two commitments. The first was to improve economic growth in the UK, which is sorely needed. And if you had £1 for every time Keir Starmer had said the word growth on the 2024 general election campaign, you'd be a very rich person indeed, because he talked about it every single day. And what's happened to growth in the UK? It's completely flat. We're now spending hundreds of millions of pounds a day just servicing our debt interest, because in fact the net effect of the Starmer-Reeves compact has been to push gilts, that's UK government borrowing, to nearly 5%, which is the worst level since the global financial crisis. So he's totally failed on the economy. On immigration, he came in saying that he would prevent channel crossings and that he would control the UK's borders. And what did he do? He spent most of his time advocating for people who, frankly, nobody wants to see living in this country, including foreign national offenders, people who are on record saying anti-Semitic comments and others, to be allowed to come to the UK. That's all I saw him do when he was in office. So whatever he did, he certainly got it badly wrong when it came to delivering on his own promises. But the key thing now is, what does Burnham do? And my message to him is, frankly, look, it's great that you care about growth, particularly in the north of England. I think that's totally right. There's no way you're going to achieve that by giving £47 billion to Mauritius. No. In fact, it's going to blow all of your commitments. So you'd be much better off sticking to your original plan, which is to focus on the priorities of voters here. We need politicians who are way more interested in what's happening in Makerfield than in Mauritius.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure if you caught some kind of member of the public in Mauritius on a good day, they'd be openly honest and go, we have no idea why they're giving us all of this. I mean, it's just a curious situation to be in. Go on.
Well, it's a good point, because actually the public opinion in Mauritius isn't universal when it comes to who should run the Chagos Islands. In fact, lots of Mauritians are very happy for the UK to continue having sovereignty there, not least because there's about 680,000 kilometres of sea within the British Indian Ocean territory, 800 species of fish. It's the biggest marine protection zone in the world, and it's currently governed in impeccably high international standards by the UK. Unfortunately, Mauritius doesn't have the expertise and the money to administer that kind of environmental territory. So that's one big problem, and a lot of Mauritians don't want to see that. The key people, though, in all of this who have been forgotten are the Chagosians themselves, who identify the Chagos Islands as their homelands. They were treated shamefully by the government under Starmer. They had a handful of meetings with them. They completely railroaded them in terms of their view on what they thought should happen. Many of them, in fact, are British Army veterans who have served in the armed forces here and have made their home in the UK and have been living here, paying tax and working legally for many, many years. And if Burnham wants to pick a fight again with the Chagosian community, I think he's getting himself into a real mess.
And a couple of them even got arrested for trying to get into Chagos as well, onto the islands, which is curious, considering we don't seem to have quite the same tactic down there at Dover.
In fact, you know, the zealotry with which it was policed when a couple of activists landed there, including the First Minister appointed by the community, Ms. Limanda, and my friend, who's still there on Chagos, because they disagree so vehemently with the idea of this not being run by Britain. They were, you know, intercepted, harassed by the authorities in a way which, you know, you wouldn't get here in the UK when it comes to people who land on our shores. Although I want to draw the line at drawing a comparison between them, because those are different cases. But the core point as well, Andy Burnham is coming into Downing Street with the US-UK relationship completely broken. It's its worst, I believe, since the end of the Second World War. In all of that time, political relations between the incumbent of 10 Downing Street and the White House have not been worse, in my view. And that is a disaster for the UK. It's a disaster economically, because so much of our growth and prosperity is based on trade 100%. With the US.
But you just needed to give him more time, Ross. You see, that's all it was. It's all he wanted. Can I just add, by the way, he wrote this in a 1,600-word essay. If I miss something here, what is this writing essay malarkey? What's all that is? Everybody seems to be at it at the moment. Oh, I've just written an essay. What are you, at school? What's wrong with you? Stick it on a website, fine.
I can tell
Put a link on Twitter.
From my experience at Downing Street, he won't have written a word of it. It would just been written.
Absolutely,
it would just been written for him and stuck on the internet. And that is at the core. That touches on the core of the problem about Keir Starmer, the human bollard, who has failed, despite having the most executive power in the land, to change this country to any degree positively whatsoever, despite having a general election mandate, to be fair to him. He won the 2024 general election with a huge majority. Labour's, you know, a very, very strong party in the House of Commons, and they got their best result for decades. And what did he do with it? He squandered it. But there is an opportunity now for Andy Burnham to ditch this Chagos deal. He should step back from it. And the main reason is really because our defence and security is more important than ever. And China is on the march. These are very sensitive islands. And the base there, I can tell you, in the US-UK relationship, defence-wise, you know, both sides bring things to the table. But the number one thing that we bring to the table is rights for the US Air Force to base its planes at Diego Garcia. And they've been used in operations just recently over Iran.
That's right.
Whatever you think about that conflict, it's clear that for the US strategically, they need the assurance from the UK that they're going to be able to use that base. So when you come to your closest partner and your closest ally, your core relationship around the world, and you tell them that you're about to ditch the key plank of what you are bringing in that relationship, you know, no wonder the Americans are unhappy with this, and Burnham will face a huge backlash from the Trump White House if he continues with this.
And the other reason, of course, is we ain't got 47 billion quid, so there is that. Listen, Ross, we hit the clock, but thank you. Good to see you. We will speak again. Lord Ross Kempsall with his Conservative peer on the programme. Thoughts on all of that? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
get to the calls now. And Kevin is in Basingstoke. Morning, Kevin. Hey. Kevin, what do you think of this cycling conversation?
Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to...
disagree with me.
Yeah. I mean, there's far more accidents caused by cars than bikes.
Yeah, we're not talking about cars, Kevin. We're talking about bikes.
I know we're talking about bikes, but if we encourage more bikes, then there'll be less accidents. More people...
yeah, more people on bikes who are not being controlled by anything.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This in from Margaret in Birmingham. It says, when Andy Burnham was knocking on doors in Makerfield, did he say anything about the Chagos deal? Don't think so. Perhaps someone should start asking questions. And that was the Guido Fawkes exclusive, revealing that Andy Burnham is minded to revive the Starmer £47 billion Chagos deal. You have to... I'd love somebody to come in and say to me, right, it sounds like a lot of money, but this is the reason why. There is no one, absolutely no one, I've never been able to get an answer even from someone who's a supporter of this government who can shed any kind of light or answer that question. Just literally nobody. Why would we do this? For what reason would we do this? And it's going to cost us 47 billion quid. It is beyond nonsensical. Cliff in Berkshire says, could we persuade Reform to give Manchester to Estonia for 35 billion if Burnham goes ahead with the Chagos betrayal? I mean, you could give it a go, Cliff, couldn't you? I mean, because that's the sort of territory we'd be in terms of bonkers, bizarre and unfathomable moves. And especially when Burnham's talking... I know this isn't confirmed, but it's sort of out there. It hasn't come completely out of nowhere. The idea that you would spend 47 million quid we haven't got is extraordinary. John in Lancaster says, I put up a blow-up bed we use when the grandkids visit in front of the TV, set my alarm for 2 a.m, watched the match in the bed, and promptly fell asleep at the end. Win-win. Thank you, John. See, that's the way to do it, isn't it? It actually worked out. The timing worked perfectly. That's what my timing was meant to be, precisely that. But it went slightly astray. It's a whole other story. James is down in Kent. What have you got? Back to the Nigel Farage story and the hounding of Nigel Farage, as many people are calling it. What are your thoughts, James? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Hi.
Well, I'm not particularly surprised about the story. I mean, politicians, they go into politics, yes, to put forward a particular message. But if we're honest, I mean, they want to enrich themselves, get on, and sort of leverage their position, you know, to have a position in society. But I'm a little bit cynical. And I think, you know, if this was all above board, and Nigel Farage is not a silly man, he's been in politics a long time, why didn't he just declare it to the Parliamentary Ethics Committee? You know, and I mean, there's lots of things coming out with this story. Like, did he really use it for security? I mean, before he was an MP, he was living in a semi in Biggin Hill. Now he's got a £4 million property portfolio, mortgage-free. So I'm sure the chap wheels and deals a little bit. But why did he hide it? Because, like Mandelson, these things have a habit of coming out, don't they?
It's kind of strange, isn't it? I am sort of rather fascinated by the growth of Nigel Farage, but one could reasonably, I suppose, James, say that, well, yeah, but it didn't just happen overnight. It's happened over the course of 10 years, and in that time, his star has risen. He's become more employable. He needs to make money somehow. Most of that time, he wasn't actually an MP, so he needs to somehow earn a living. Why would he not go down that path? And if there are people along the way that want to help him, then so what?
I don't begrudge him the money or what he earns legitimately.
Sure.
I mean, that's his lookout, and he declares it. But I mean, when he comes forward and says, "Well, I've been given this £5 million for security," not declaring it, not producing any accounts. And I assume when you get these donations or whatever, you have to submit detailed accounts to the Parliament as well to show where the money's going and to justify, what you're saying is doing. I mean, the guy's not stupid. Why didn't he just do it? Because he knows that there are people out there just like Mandelson who hate his guts and will jump on him for anything that any time he sort of sneezes the wrong direction.
That's true, but I would guess if this, if the Standards Committee say, yeah, you should have declared this, I mean, I don't know whether they will fine you or whatever. I mean, you're not going to jail for it. It's not like a criminal offence.
No.
It's an official misdemeanour, if you like, a paperwork-based misdemeanour.
Well, I'm hearing all this stuff in the press, now that he's severely worried about it and that he's thinking of stepping back. And if he does that, I think Reform have got a problem because, to me, they've got good policies, but Nigel Farage does carry Reform. And I think without Nigel Farage, I don't think there would be Reform, to be honest with you.
I think, I mean, it pains me to say it, not because I don't like Nigel, but because I like the idea that a party is stronger than just one component, whoever the party is. It's healthier that it looks like that. But I do think, and I think it's long been an area of concern for Reform, that his pivotal nature is so intense that it would mean tricky problems for Reform if he wasn't there. I mean,
I do think so. Yeah,
game-changing problems.
I think the problem with the right at the moment, just very quickly, is I think a lot of it is very personality-led, these parties, and it's split, very big egos. I mean, Rupert Lowe is quite a charismatic bloke as well. I mean, if you talk to him, if you see him, and I think it needs to move beyond the politics of personality, you know what I'm saying? And we need to sort of scrutinise the nitty-gritty, but... Yeah, it's great to talk to you, Ian. I've been listening to you since I was a kid, so way back in the Invicta days.
Wow.
So,
I was also a kid back then, so not far off it. Blimey.
Not far off it, but been a long time listening to you.
Well, that's very kind of you. Nice one. Thank you, James. Really appreciate that. James down there in Kent. Thank you to him. More from you. Stephen says, with this much digging on Farage, there must be an election around the corner. There is something in that Stephen said. Not that there's necessarily an election around the corner, but you could say that this is... If there's not going to be an election for another 2.5 years, and this story is all they have on Nigel Farage, then he's done all right. Nigel Farage has done all right, because by the time it gets to 2029, nobody's going to be bringing up the story of when a bloke that was a bit wonky or flexible with American law and went to jail for half an hour that paid for his social media staff or something. I mean, that's going to be long forgotten. Unless there is going to be an election tomorrow, then, of course, it will be more relevant. But I don't think there is. Dan in Staffordshire says, afternoon, Ian, great show. On Donald Trump getting the red card overturned, please don't let Starmer negotiate our red card. He would strike a deal where we start the game 10-0 down, all on a yellow, and Jordan Pickford to start with one hand tied behind his back. That would be extraordinary, wouldn't it? Yeah. There is, of course, one now non-playing player who's only got the use of one hand after falling over an advertising hoarding. We wish him well. This one in from John in Lincolnshire. The one thing all politicians have in common is they leave office richer than when they started. So Nigel Farage has had a few nice handouts, but at least he doesn't hate the people of this country like Starmer, who has his own Act of Parliament to protect his pension. Do you? I didn't know that. Is there an Act of Parliament to protect the Starmer's, the Office of Prime Minister's pension, or everybody in there? Either way, John, you're absolutely right. You very rarely leave. I'm the odd exception when somebody comes along, they win a by-election and not much happens, but that's about it. Jill's in Cornwall. Jill, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. There's so many things, isn't there? Honestly,
loads.
Donald Trump has got a blinking cheek. And what are they doing taking any notice of him anyway? You know, he shouldn't be allowed to just stand up and say, you know, the red card's got to be put off for 12 months.
It's a bit bizarre, that, isn't it? The red card story is simply odd.
Yes, I just think he's got a cheek. But no, it was about the government stopping, smoking with people of a certain age and goodness knows what. I mean, I'm not being funny, but they want to legalise drugs, and people puff away on cannabis and God knows what. But yet someone who buys a legal cigarette has to stand on a pavement outside because they're not allowed. I just think it's so hypocritical. It's just not even worth discussing. But they seem to be allowed to get away with this. And I mean, I used to smoke many years ago, but I just think that people should be allowed to make. Sometimes you should be allowed to make your own decision about something.
Well, yes. I mean, I'd quite like to bring those vending machines back that used to dispense cigarettes and would stand in the kind of hallway of a pub. Amazing bits of kit, very convenient.
If I had any hope or faith in the government making the right decisions, then I would support some of the things that they would want to ban. But they make the most stupid decisions on some things and allow other things to happen that you can't. I sort of wonder why, and yet they get supported, you know. And I think that no, they should definitely not ban smoking as such. People should be allowed to choose what they want to do, and if they tell someone with, is it a spliff or a reefer or what? Whatever.
Either or.
If they're allowed to roll a cigarette because they want to legalise drugs, and yet someone puffing on a cigarette has to stand outside, I just think that we're stupid if we support that.
And I think you're absolutely bang on. Great. Jill, lovely to speak. Thank you very much indeed for that. There's lots in what Jill was saying there. I'm pretty sure, by the way, when you could buy cigarettes in a vending machine, I don't know when that went out of the window. Every now and again, you'll go to a sort of European country like Bulgaria and you'll see a cigarette vending machine, and it's like a slice of sort of retro delight where you go, wow, that was like seeing a Wimpy. You know, it's got that sort of vibe to it. And I'm sure one of these I might have definitely made up in my kind of head, not intentionally. Certainly, there was a point when if you wanted to buy 20 cigarettes from a machine, but the price had changed, so they couldn't charge you a £5 or something, or they couldn't charge you for whatever it was, but you'd get 17 or 18 in a pack of it. So it looked like a 20 pack, but there was only 17 or 18 in there because of the way the pricing worked. Is that right? Have I got that wrong? And was there also such a thing of you'd pay for you'd stick a £5 in, it took a £5 note or 5 coins or something, and you'd get a pack back with a £1 coin sellotape to it. That's the bit I think I've made up. Because if it was £5 and you put £5 coins in and you got £1 back, that you're ahead of me, right? You just put £4 coins in, wouldn't you? You wouldn't need unless it was. I don't know. There was something of that, but definitely the cigarette removal, like 18 or 17 cigarettes, that was a big thing. But all of that is way a thing of the past. So is now physical smoking. If you were born after the 1st of January, or after 1st of January 2009. Andrew's in Hertfordshire. What have you got for us, Andrew? Afternoon.
Yeah, it was in 2023 that when they announced that they're going to indict Trump, that straight away the comes out on Twitter and says he is just walking straight back in president. And that's exactly what up with Farage. Here's what it is. Mm-hmm. He just needs to fess up. But equally, it does him the power of good to leave it out there in the media, because the more all he has to say is they're targeting me. There's nothing in it.
But the thing is, it's not a target. I mean, if you want to be the president, you're going to come under some scrutiny, right? And the nearer you get to it, the more intense that scrutiny is and should be.
I agree with you 100%. They're a very small party, as someone said earlier. Not a lot of people. You know, they're really struggling here. So He's just got to come out and say, right, look, the bloke gave it to me. That's the end of it.
Yeah.
You can investigate it if you want to. If they go for an election in Saxon, then all that's going to happen is he's going to get a resounding victory. That's what will happen. So nobody wins it. All he has to do is just come out and say, look, I knew the bloke. He gave me that. And it's not £5 million. That is incorrectly reported because the bloke paid tax. So he probably had to earn 10 million to give him 5. And that's what people haven't noticed. It's a lot more money than you think.
But it's still a £5 million donation to Mr. Farage, isn't it?
Yeah, but the bloke had to earn 10 to do that if he's taxed at 50%. So we're talking about a big chunk of change that you just give to your mate to spend on sweets.
Yeah, but, you know, if you're worth $1 billion...
Yeah, exactly. And
it's nothing, is it?
I'm not. No, if I'm not, but if I was, you'd be the first person to get £5 million.
Andrew, you are more than generous, and vice versa as well. I'd send it over to Hertfordshire in an every delivery box as soon as I could. Andrew, thank you for that. 0344 499 1000. Voice of Doom answers guesses coming up in a couple of moments, and we'll talk a little matter of football last night. 25 to 4. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Toby Gillis, reporter, TalkSport, newsreader, journalist, all-round good bloke. Not really a football fan, unless you include Watford in that list. And interestingly, a bit of a disproportionality of Watford love in this building, of course, because we have Ryan, one of our producers, who's also, I mean, he's an absolute mad Watford fan. I don't mean mad.
Yeah, there's a few of us.
You know, he's psychologically damaged.
There's a few that have left recently as well. I don't know if they just couldn't cope with having to talk about Watford as much as they had.
I think it could be that. But I don't know whether it's more than that or less than that, because you are sort of, you know, there's patriotic England fans when a match is on, and everyone's on a gradient. And I'll give you an example of this. Although I think I told you this in the office earlier about my mate who I saw in the street. It's worth telling. Arsenal season ticket holder all his life. His kids at Arsenal. So he lives and breathes, cut him in half. He'll bleed red and white. You know, he's got a cannon in his front garden. Hasn't, but you know what I mean. He's got all of that going on. Absolutely massive. And I said to him, what are you going to be doing tomorrow night for the match? Are you going to sleep beforehand or afterwards? And he went, not watching it, mate. And I went, what? And he went, I've got no interest in international football. He said, as much as I follow Arsenal all around the world, so when it comes to England, he says, it's not my thing.
He's called Toby as well, isn't he?
He's called Toby as well.
So he is, if you take the sort of global order of Tobys, he is the opposite Toby to me.
Yes.
Because I'm a massive rarity within the TalkSport office, for example, because I am country over club, which is a hugely rare thing nowadays.
Well, not when you're a Watford fan.
No, maybe not. Maybe there's a reason for that, yeah. But it is a real rarity, so, you know, there was no danger of me missing last night whatsoever. I had to be up, and I cried for an hour.
You had
at
that
the end
thing,
of the game.
You had that thing I have. Like, you can't justify... Like, I can't ever find an argument to justify the royal family existing, OK? And then... on the Queen's Jubilee, I see the Queen floating down the Thames, Madness playing on Buckingham Palace, and you couldn't fire me up anymore if you plugged me into the mains. And suddenly it's like, wow, this is the national anthem's playing, I'm almost saluting, bawling my eyes out. But similarly, you had that. I mean, you were. Yeah. I mean, what a night!
It was. We've been joking. I'm sure you will have mentioned over the previous few days there were this. Well, it seems unfounded reports that you know there was the talk about the altitude in Mexico City and how you might deal with it, and there were these unfounded reports that England had discovered that the secret potentially to handling that was Viagra, and they did joke about it in advance. And as I've said to a few people in the office today, I'm not sure that you could have turned me on any more than the full-time whistle did last night. So I'm not sure I'd have needed that. I mean, it was extraordinary.
It did, but it should be said on the altitude thing. Yes, there is an altitude issue, but they weren't playing on the top of Everest.
No, they weren't, but it was significant.
It does hit the lungs.
Look, it has to be said, Mexico have played 80-something matches in the Azteca, 86, I think it is, matches in the Azteca prior to last night. They had lost 2 and won 70. I mean,
3 now.
3 now, and England did it with 10 men in that altitude situation and all of that. And actually, altitude hasn't really been mentioned. Nobody asked about how they coped with it, because they looked like they had energy to burn until that 10-man situation happened, until Jarrell Quansah got sent off. And we're still waiting to find out whether Donald Trump will be phoning Gianni Infantino to ask whether Jarrell Quansah's red card can be
I know. We'll come to that in a second. It's interesting. I did note, like, at the end, there was just a shot of Jude Bellingham that looked like... You know when you watch one of those... Attenborough documentaries, and the hyena is chasing the gazelle or something, and the gazelle can hardly breathe.
Oh, he looked like he was going to be sick, didn't he, at one point?
But the gazelle gets away.
Yes.
And there was a bit of that. I mean, I'm pretty sure even the Mexicans would have been knackered after that.
I think so.
It's not as if they play there like that every single day.
It was truly an extraordinary experience. As an England fan, I've said this to a few people in the office, and it seems to have sort of bypassed a lot of people. You know, I'm 42 years old. I watched the Euros in '96. That's sort of the big first memory. I do remember tournaments before that, but it's the big first memory. And, you know, that sort of German curse that we had.
Yeah.
We've had the penalties curse. We've had red cards for Beckham against Argentina. We've had the red card for Rooney against Portugal. We've had Rooney and Beckham metatarsal injuries. Last night, the reason I'm so up today, so excited, and maybe for the first time in my life believe that there's a chance we will win a major tournament, I've never truly believed it, is because for the very first time I saw us overcome in-game adversity. There was a togetherness and a spirit that I've never seen, and I don't recall us winning a game having had to overcome, you know, red card, penalties going against us, this mad, fanatical home crowd, the being up so high, Mexico having had the altitude training all this time for the whole tournament, all of that was against us, and suddenly, somehow, we found a way, and I've never seen us do that before, and that's why suddenly I'm going, OK, there's now a chance. I still don't really expect it. I think France and Spain are both better than England, but I could see us reaching the final now.
I think also, for me, one of the kind of game changers is that, you know, when we've always had a slight self-flagellating view of things, that, you know, it's the other countries that have the really big superstars, and Mbappe obviously currently in France, but typically Messi, Ronaldo, those kind of characters.
Yamal for Spain.
Yeah, all of that. We actually do have at least 2 of those characters right now, and Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane, of course, are up there with that lot. And if you are Norway right now, if you are France right now, and obviously no one knows how the next bit after the next bit is going to pan out in terms of the draw, but your team will be, you know, these guys are dangerous.
Yeah, they're
we never used to talk in
Harry
that
Kane,
way.
I think, has scored 72 goals for club and country this season.
It's extraordinary.
It's absolutely ridiculous. And Jude Bellingham, I mean, we've been laughing in the office today about the fact that for so long we had a conversation about whether he would start for England in this World Cup. Morgan Rogers was the chap. He had a very good season for Aston Villa, and by all accounts he's an outstanding footballer.
Yeah.
But Jude Bellingham is truly, truly world class. And it feels feels to me like it's one of those Premier League bias stories. You know, he's never played in the Premier League, Bellingham. He went from the Championship with his home club, Birmingham, into Germany, where he played for one of the German giants, Borussia Dortmund, and then straight to Real Madrid. And I think perhaps because we haven't had that period of seeing him in the Premier League, so many fans who, you know, are big Premier League fans but maybe don't necessarily watch Bellingham week in, week out, perhaps don't realise... I mean, no disrespect to Morgan Rogers, because it's not an insult to be not as good as Jude Bellingham, but he is head and shoulders above Morgan Rogers.
Something else. I mean, to the point that if Spain were in the final, there are some Spanish, certainly Madrid fans, that would be compromised on who they supported, because Bellingham has got such hero status in the same way that Harry Kane has in Germany.
Well, there are no Real Madrid players in the Spanish squad. And, that is his club, of course.
So he's a licence for somebody to, you know, if you're if that is your team, then. But he's done incredibly well. And do you remember he started speaking Spanish after about 20 hours in Spain?
I mean, and there's been this thing going round today, a sort of viral clip on social media. There's a Venezuelan journalist in the mixed zone after the game last night.
Oh, the guy in the wheelchair.
He was in a wheelchair, clearly disabled, and he was asking all of the England players for an interview. And all of them... I wouldn't go so far as to say they ignored him, but, you know, you're not obliged to stop for anyone specific in the mix, so none of them fancied it. He then asked Jude Bellingham for a chat in Spanish, interestingly, and Jude did stop and respond and have a conversation, and presumably he's got some nice lines out of him. So, you know, that in itself, you know, he might have an arrogance about him, an air about him, I think. And there are some people that don't like him because of that. For me, it's kind of what England have missed for years, really probably since Wayne Rooney broke through.
Good point.
But he's been able to back it up with people like Harry Kane, who's truly world-class, people like Declan Rice, who's truly world-class, and then this apparent spirit that was built, I think we should say, by Gareth Southgate, but seems to have been built further somehow by Thomas Tuchel.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, look, because of the way football and football support works, if we did sadly lose, Tuchel will go from hero to what the hell was a German doing there in the first place.
Well, wasn't that far away, was he, against Congo in the last game, 1-0 down for so long.
Last night you looked and you saw, obviously, there's two sets of brilliance going on, because, you know, the idea that there wasn't managerial kind of templates and philosophy behind that is not just... There really was.
Yeah, it wasn't a tactical masterclass, though.
No, absolutely not.
Particularly
towards the end, perhaps.
But it was that going to the back three after the sending off and allowing the full-backs, the wider players, to cover where the crosses were coming in from, I thought was a masterclass. And the fact that he went for big Dan Burn, who probably most of us thought had gone to the tournament just to make up the numbers, really. Ginormous Newcastle centre-half towards the end of his career. It's a great story, but he was outstanding as a substitute, as was Jed Spence, who came on at full-back, who had been pilloried for his performance in the previous game, wasn't necessarily totally fit and still did... I mean, there was nobody that was poor. Even Kwanzaa, that got sent off, was doing fine until that point.
Until he nearly took a man's legs out. Just a final point...
to the opposite of taking a man's legs out, to giving him them back.
I mean, this is just extraordinary. So this is the red card that was given to America's arguably
Following Balogun,
their best player,
their best striker,
the best striker they have, gets a red card, means he can't play in the next match. Of course, that's the way it works. And then somehow Trump makes a phone call to somebody and they go, hey, we rescinded the red card.
Yeah, Donald Trump has made a phone call to Gianni Infantino, who is the head at FIFA, the man that makes the decisions, who gave Donald the Peace Prize famously a year or so back that FIFA created essentially just for the President of the United States. Look, the red card that Balogun got was, in many people's views, harsh, maybe even wrong. There isn't an appeal process in this World Cup, which is bizarre, really. And perhaps had there been an appeals process, they could have appealed it. It may or may not have got rescinded, but either way, you then uphold the ban if it's right, that was the correct decision, or you go, we rescind the whole thing. What happened after Donald Trump made this phone call, because there's no official appeals process, is this supposed independent panel made a call that they would suspend the ban for the year. So unless he does something wrong again, playing for the US in future, he will not have to take this one-match ban. So the World Cup will not be affected for him unless he did it again, say, in the next game. And he is now entitled to play against Belgium early hours of tomorrow morning. I think it's 1 a.m.
Something you have to extrapolate from that. That's clearly big. What Donald Trump interfered
It is
with,
a political interference in sport.
This is sort of Kim Jong-un territory, right?
I can't tell you, you know, from a purely personal perspective, I'm probably as angry about this as I am happy about England. It is extraordinary. And the Belgians are furious, of course, and the Norwegian coach yesterday, who is not impacted directly in any way, went absolutely ballistic about it after they beat Brazil yesterday. You know, they should have been celebrating something else, but it is a sporting integrity story, and whatever happens to the US now, be they get knocked out overnight or be they win the whole tournament, there is an asterisk against their campaign, there's no doubt.
Very finally, Toby, another big match. They're all big matches, of course, at this level. On Saturday, it is Norway again. Not a bad track record against Norway, but there are some thundering workhorses coming at them. And obviously, everybody looks at Haaland. His goal-scoring record in this tournament has been pretty good.
Well, he's matching the rest, isn't he? Mbappe and Messi.
And Messi. So, and he's right up there. And you know,
he could win it on his own for Norway. He's good. He did against Brazil yesterday. Yeah. I think England are better than Brazil. I think they probably go in as favourites, but I fear Haaland. It is that simple. If he turns up, he can knock you out on his own. Otherwise, you'd hope that England have got enough.
We were just saying, Finn, our producer, we were just saying, you know, everybody instinctively goes, oh, thank God it's not Brazil. No, it's the team that beat Brazil.
I'd rather have Brazil. Brazil are only a big deal now if you've got a long memory. There's a whole generation of football fans that have
Pelé
never
no longer plays for Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, the last truly great Brazil national team, they actually won the World Cup in 2002, but I think their 98 team that lost in the final to France were probably better. And so there's a whole generation of football fans that probably wonder why those of us that are a bit older talk about this sort of, you know, Brazil being the pantheon of greats and
well,
the
also
team
Mexico was a bit like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We were thinking until people said, actually, sorry, look at our track record with Mexico, it's pretty good, you know.
But I think that was partly about the stadium, wasn't it?
It was all about the stadium, about the crowd, the altitude thing, the fans, the sort of Hunger Games vibe about the whole thing.
It was absolutely, genuinely a joy to witness. And I've really got World Cup fever fully now, you know.
Well, Saturday will come very quickly, and hopefully this time next week, Toby will be sitting there bawling his eyes out again like a baby.
I'll take it,
saying,
as long as it's happy tears.
Another win. We're into
I need
the
happy
semis.
tears.
Absolutely right. Good to see you, Toby. Thank you for coming in. Toby Guinness with us here on the programme. Now, I mentioned this a little earlier, how to win £26,000 for the 2026 World Cup. This is how you enter.
For your chance to win, visit talk.tv/win or text TALK to 83338 by 6 p.m. on the 20th of July 2026. Texts cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or send your name and number by post to Comp 1, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP. To arrive by midnight on the 23rd of July 2026. 18 plus, UK residents only. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. This is a network promotion, full T's and C's at talk.tv/win.
The thing that most makes me angry about Keir Starmer, talking about the need to defend our country, and he's gone out of his way to not make the tough decisions, to actually do the thing to defend our nation. It's cowardly, and I think it's treacherous.
Nothing to say on immigration, nothing to say on benefits, nothing to say on jobs, nothing to say on tax. Absolutely appalling. If this is the solution the country's been waiting for, then we are in a very, very bad place.
People up and down the country are asking why they are always being put second. They work every day, they get up, they pay their bills, they look after their kids, and yet the other side of the social contract is not being held up.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just before we talk to Mark, don't go away, Mark. Voice of Doom. It was day one of a brand new mystery voice. This is the voice.
What we want to do.
And again.
What we want to do.
These are some of the guesses. Denzel Davis, Antonio Guterres, Jean-Claude Juncker, Lee Kuan Yew. Is that made up? Helmut Kohl, Oswald Mosley, Nelson Mandela, Robert Mugabe, Narendra Modi, Taylor Swift. Yes. No. Kurt Waldheim. No. Idi Amin, Jacques Chirac. All, impressive and varied answers. None of them are correct. We didn't get a right answer. It rolls over to tomorrow. Mark in Lincolnshire. What have you got, Mark? We've not got long, but I'm sure you can do it.
Hi there, Ian. How are you doing, mate?
All right, thanks.
This Farage thing.
Yeah.
I think the cultists are being a bit naive on all of this, because it seems to me that they're just basically voting for the exact same thing that they apparently don't want anymore, i.e. Tory sleaze corruption, Labour sleaze corruption. But here we have a man that took 5 million quid, nice little bum that, from a crypto billionaire. That's relevant, which you'll find out in a second. Takes these 5 million quid 4 months before he becomes an MP again.
Yeah.
Now, I've read the rules on this. They're quite clear, actually. Anything within 12 months, donation, hospitality, gift, over a certain amount, I think donations, 1,500 quid, gifts, £300. Anything over that, you have to declare it. It's irrelevant what it's for, what its purpose is, you have to declare it. Okay? So he has broken the rules. There's no question about that.
Well, that does seem to be an area of contention, though, Mark, because there is this.
I can't see how.
Well, only because the timeline of when he decided to become an MP, I think, is relevant.
I don't think it is relevant. It's completely irrelevant. If it was relevant, Ian, why does the rules say previous 12 months before becoming an MP?
Is it possible, do you think, we will find out whatever ruling there is on this stuff. I mean, could you understand why somebody who might go, oh, look, he's dropping out of politics, I want him to stay in politics because I think he's the answer to our problems, here's 5 million quid. It's a bit unconventional, but anything wrong with that in principle?
The thing is, Ian, right, now here's where it gets, for me, really iffy, where it stinks. In my opinion, this just stinks. He then comes back, he takes this money 4 months before becoming an MP again. He comes back as an MP. Within 2 days of becoming back as an MP, he's doing an article in financiallondon.com that's, I'll give you the headline, Nigel Farage calls for UK crypto push as reform campaign kicks off.
On that point, Mark, leave that hanging. I say that only because we've literally run out of time, but that's a good point, dramatic point to finish on. We will talk again on this. Kevin O'Sullivan is here after the news, Kev.
I like Mark, but I think his headline writing needs a little work. That would not be the headline on it, Mark. Excuse me, all a bit tired today.
We are a bit.
I mean, that was the killer, wasn't it? I stayed up like everybody else.